This is Dash Parr, and many of you may know him as the oldest son of Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible. And although Dash thinks it's great that he inherited superpowers as he has super speed, he still wishes that he had an opportunity to use it in the way that he wants to.
Maybe I could if you'd let me go out for sports. You always say, do your best, but you don't really mean it. Why can't I do the best that I can do?
So today I will be putting Dash into College Football 26. Let's see how great he can be if his parents let him play football as we follow him on his road to glory. Now Dash grew up in the hills of Westview, where his dad, Mr. Incredible, spent a lot of time teaching him how to play football. But unfortunately, it took a lot to convince his mom to let him play in the first place.
Then let him actually compete. Let him go out for sports.
I will not be made the enemy here. You know why we can't do that.
Because it'd be great!
Eventually, Dash would get the opportunity to play football in middle school, and it would not be long before he would prove to be one of the fastest players on the field. The coaches didn't even realize how fast he really was, but they definitely did know that he was a special athlete. Dash throughout middle school literally did not even get touched a single time. He ran by every single defense, and by the time that he was a freshman, he would start getting some major offers from Division I schools. But unfortunately, his mom thought this was too much, so he had to reassure her that going forward, he will only be the best by a little.
I promise I'll slow up. I'll only be the best by a tiny bit.
Eventually, by his sophomore season, Dash was nationally ranked as a 3-star recruit. But it looked like that was going to change soon, because at some point people realized that Dash was the fastest player in all of high school football. This kid was so fast that sometimes he had to let up right before the goal line to make it seem like he didn't have superpower. Soon though, Dash would be heading into his junior season, and he would be getting more offers from around the country. And this is actually around the time where he had a little bit of a growth spurt and went from 5'5" to 5'9". So now Dash is a little bit taller, and he is still damn near going untouched to the end zone. There was nobody who was going to catch him if he broke into the secondary, and that's exactly why by his senior season, Dash Parr was a 5-star recruit. He had offers from pretty much every school in the country, because despite being only 5'9", there were many coaches who saw a lot of potential in him. And soon, it would be time for Dash to figure out what coach he wanted to play for. His top 3 colleges ended up being Louisville, USC, and Wisconsin. But it turns out that for Dash Parr's college decision, he would ultimately not sign with USC, because he was going to take his talents to Louisville and sign with the Cardinals. And now that Dash is here with Louisville, he has to pick a new number. But this coaching staff actually reserved a specific number for him, as he will take number 1. The coaches feel like Dash Parr might be the future of the program. For now though, despite the fact that Dash was looking pretty much untouchable at practice, he was heading into his first season of college football as the backup running back. The coaches let him know that he'll get some opportunities here and there, but they definitely trust their number 1 guy. So Dash is looking forward to any chances he gets to help his team win in their first game against Charlotte. Now Dash Parr is making his college football debut here in the second quarter. On the second down to 12, he would take his first carry of his career and zoom upfield for a big first down. Dash knows he definitely could have scored a touchdown right there, but he didn't want to go too crazy quite yet. The coaches ended up taking him out though till the third quarter, where they brought him back in for another chance at a handoff. And it turns out that on this play, Dash decided to take off on this defense. This kid just cruised to the end zone for his first touchdown of his college football career. And it turns out that wouldn't even be the only one that he would get today, because the coaches brought him back in the fourth quarter at the 1, where he was easily able to cross over the goal line for his second score of the game. Dash is having a great college football debut, and it looks like he did enough to help his team get their first win of the season. Louisville starts the year 1-0 in dominant fashion, and it was led by amazing performances from really both their running backs, as their starter ended up going for over 200 yards. But it turns out this game would actually cause Keywan Brown to have a little bit of an attitude, because he ended up texting Dash and telling him that he better not even think about taking his job. And I'm not gonna lie, all that really did was just make Dash mad. So he made it his goal to try a little bit harder and actually take his job soon. But unfortunately, he would not get an opportunity quite yet, as he was not getting any playing time in their next game. Luckily, their team did go on to win, but Dash knew that heading into their next matchup, he was going to let the coaches know exactly why he should be the starter. And he was going to prove to the coaches that he was one of, if not the fastest players in all of college football. Now Dash would come out here in the first quarter backed up on his own 3-yard line, but on this screen pass, he would come up with a nice play that allowed his team to get out to the 24-yard line. Now he wouldn't come back in until the end of the second quarter, but at this point his team is down by 6. So when the coaches told him to go out there at wide receiver, he knew that this was a chance for him to get open, as he just glides past his defender and comes up with the catch for the touchdown. Dash comes up with a huge play on 3rd down and long, as he makes a play that helps his team take control of this game. And he wasn't even done there in the second quarter, because his team would get the ball back after a turnover, and Dash would again take advantage with another catch for a touchdown. Dash is back in the end zone for the second time on the day, and now his team has all the momentum on their side. Because by the time Dash gets back in, they have a 14-6 lead in the 4th quarter. Bringing us to a 1st down and 10 where Dash got wide open in the flat before saying hey and zoomed upfield as it looked like he was off to the races. This man Dash just snatched this dude's ankles and was up out of there. He makes a play that gives his team a commanding lead in the 4th quarter, and ultimately that was enough to get Louisville their 2nd win of the season. Dash Parr didn't even have a single carry on the day, but yet he was still the player of the game. He scored 3 receiving touchdowns and almost went for 200 yards, doing enough to earn him the opportunity to move up as the starting halfback. Dash Parr's talents were undeniable, as the coaches knew that this kid was special, and ultimately he would be promoted to the starter. This is something Dash had been waiting for his whole life, man. He just wanted to be great at a sport, and now he would get the chance to, because now heading into his next game, he will officially be the starter, and it will be in a tough matchup as Louisville is at home against Georgia. Now Dash Parr had this offense moving on their opening drive with a couple big carries, but the team did get pushed to a 3rd down and goal where they did get stopped and had to settle for 3. Bringing us to the second quarter with this game tied at 3, where Dash decided that it was time for him to swerve around this defense as he was getting past the secondary and heading to the end zone for a touchdown. Dash Parr just torched this entire defense with a huge carry, helping his team take the 10-3 lead before Georgia ties it back up. But now Dash is already back to making some big play, and damn, he looked like Mr. Incredible right there. Eventually though, Louisville would come to a 1st down and 10 where Dash did not get great blocks, but they were good enough for him to zoom around and make his way to the end zone for his 2nd touchdown of the day, and even Dash cannot believe that he is doing this. This kid is frying up the 8th ranked team in the nation. And it turns out that he would not be done there, as his team had a 17-13 lead, and Dash was still going crazy on the Bulldogs. He got his team into field goal range on a 3rd down and goal where they unfortunately got stopped, but it turns out that Georgia wasn't able to get much of anything going on offense throughout the rest of this game, and Louisville would find a way to come up with the upset victory. The Cardinals finished this one off 20-13, and they were led by Dash Parr's incredible performance, going for 269 yards with 2 touchdowns. This kid looked unstoppable at times, and even though he was pretty short, he was still able to run past everybody. And it's actually at this point where he was starting to get a lot more attention, as he was not only earning himself an Offensive Player of the Week, but he also earned his first ever NIL deal. So Dash is definitely feeling good moving forward into the season, and he's hoping that he can help his team stay undefeated, as they're about to face off against another undefeated squad on the road against NC State. But this game was looking a little bit different for Dash compared to his other games, as he was having a hard time getting things going without showing that he had powers. By the end of the second quarter though, he would help his team get into field goal range twice, and they would now be up 6-3 by the 4th quarter. Where at this point Dash was really beginning to catch his stride, as he was continuously picking up 1st down. He got his team to a 1st down and 10 where they got the ball back to Dash before he snatched these 2 dudes' ankles on his way to the end zone. Dash Parr scores the 1st touchdown of the day, and after helping his team take a 2-possession lead here in the 4th quarter, he has done enough to move Louisville to 5-0 on the year. Dash Parr had an underwhelming game by his standard, but still he went for 144 yards. After the game though, he made sure to give credit to his teammates, and he was not talking about his football teammates, he was really talking about his family, because he knows they've supported him the whole way.
Make it close!
Second play!
Close second! Yeah! 10! Yeah!
At this point, Louisville is the 15th ranked team in the nation, and they look like they have a chance to compete for a national championship if they keep this up. In order to do that though, they will have to stay on track and take down another top-ranked team, as they're about to face off against the 21-ranked SMU. Now, it would not be long into this game before Dash Parr was flying into the secondary before stiff-arming this defender. Dash Parr was too fast for this defense, and that's something he would continue to prove here in the second quarter, as on this play he cut back on his defense, and with a couple good blocks he was able to zoom right past everybody for another touchdown. Dash was back in the end zone to help his team take a 14-7 lead, which they would maintain until the 4th quarter, bringing us to a 3rd down and 8 where Louisville had a chance to put this game away, and it was Dash who came up with the catch that moved the chains. Louisville now just needed one more 1st down to end this one, and one more carry from Dash Parr would get it done. Dash picks up another 1st down with SMU having no timeouts, and thanks to another amazing performance from him, Louisville is now 6-0 on the year. They squeaked this one out 14-7 thanks to a 200-yard performance from Dash Parr. He helped take down another top-ranked team in the nation, but even still, he is working extremely hard to get better. Dash wants to become one of the greatest football players of all time, but he knows the only way to do that would be by putting up an all-time great performance. So he's hoping that he can make that happen heading into his next game against Georgia Tech. Early on, Dash is looking pretty good as he was pretty easily coming up with first down carries. He realized that this defense was weak as hell. So the next opportunity he got, he decided that he was gonna take off on this defense. Dash Parr was headed to the crib for the first touchdown of the day. And it seemed like everybody in the crowd had the feeling that this was only just the beginning. Because on the very next drive, backed up on their own 4-yard line, they gave the ball back to Dash, and he just glided past this defense. Georgia Tech had no way of stopping Dash. Even when he slows up and runs across the goal line, he still would score, as he now had his team up 14-0 in the first quarter, but they would have another chance to extend their lead after getting the ball right back off a turnover. Bringing us to a 3rd and 1 where his team got the ball back to Dash, and he just zoomed past the defense again. Dash is only on his 7th carry, and he has over 200 yards with 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. He was having an incredible performance, and it was not going to stop there, because as soon as he touched the ball here in the second quarter, Dash was outrunning this defense again. Dash might be on his way to having a historical performance. He comes up with his 4th touchdown of the day to put him at 299 yards. This kid was absolutely phenomenal, and by the end of the second quarter, he already had over 340 yards rushing. But it looked like he'll have a chance to get some yards as a receiver as he came up with the catch over the top. And Dash Parr was heading back to the end zone for his 5th touchdown. He's already done enough to convince the coaches to sit the starters for the rest of the half, as Louisville was now moving on to 7-0 on the year. They take down Georgia Tech in very convincing fashion, mostly thanks to a 382-yard rushing performance from Dash. He also had 5 touchdowns on the day, and he went on to break multiple records not only for Louisville but also in the ACC. Dash was playing outstanding at this point as he earned himself a National Offensive Player of the Week. And on top of that, he was getting a lot of love from his dad, Mr. Incredible, who let him know that he is proud of how great that he is doing and that he thinks that he could potentially win a Heisman Trophy. So that is definitely something that Dash is going to try and get. He doesn't want to go too crazy because he doesn't want to make it obvious that he's a super, but he's going to do his best to stay locked in heading into his next game against Syracuse. Now this one was not going super well for this offense as they only had 3 points in this game, and their quarterback was throwing a pick here in the 3rd quarter. Luckily, it turns out Syracuse was not able to capitalize on this at all. And Dash knew that with this game getting ready to head into its final quarter, he had to start making some big plays soon. So he decided to move his way to the sideline where there was nobody who was going to catch him as he flew past everyone and scored a touchdown to give his team the lead heading into the 4th quarter. Dash was showing up big for his team when it mattered most, but it turns out that they would need him again because they would get the ball back with the lead and a chance to put this game away with another touchdown. So that's why on this play, Dash decided to go ahead and snatch this dude's ankles before zooming upfield and around his defense for another touchdown on the day. Dash Parr just gave his team a 2-possession lead here in the 4th quarter, and it's looking like he just helped his team escape with another victory on the season. Dash went on to rush for over 200 yards again and earned himself another Offensive Player of the Week. He was absolutely on a roll heading into the back half of the season as it was clear that he was unstoppable. There was no other player in the country who was able to catch up to Dash, and even when they had him dead to rights, he still would find a way to get out of it like he did here against Stanford. He was embarrassing his opponents on a weekly basis, and unfortunately in this game it was definitely Stanford's turn as they could not stop him from getting to the end zone. He ended up going for his 3rd score of the day, doing enough to get his team their 9th win of the season. Louisville was continuing their dominance throughout the ACC, and Dash Parr was undoubtedly the biggest reason why. Rightfully so, he was getting a lot of attention from around the country, as he was being recognized as one of the top backs in the nation, and it seems like every single week he would continue to prove why, as he came out here and absolutely torched this UNC defense. He was an absolute problem for the Tar Heels, and he even had his team in position to put this game away with the field goal, but he decided to take matters into his own hands as he took this ball to the crib for another touchdown. He got his team the lead with less than 15 seconds left, doing enough to keep them undefeated on the year. Dash Parr continued to show week in and week out just how great he could really be, as at this point he already has over 1,700 rushing yards on the season. Still though, he has a couple more games on the schedule to add a little bit more to that total, but heading into his next game against Pittsburgh, Dash decided that he was not going to go too crazy. He only had 50 yards rushing by the end of the fourth quarter where he finally decided to break out, but even then he still chose not to take it to the crib for a long touchdown. He did just enough to help his team get in the end zone for a score, but with 1 minute left, Pittsburgh found a way to send it into overtime, where luckily they only scored 3 points on their opening drive, so Dash decided to take it upon himself to score a touchdown and put this game away. Louisville is now 11-0 and the third-ranked team in the nation. They were just running through their entire schedule, and their next game against Kentucky would be no different, because Dash Parr was making plays like on this 3rd down and 20 where he somehow found his way to the end zone for a touchdown. He came up huge for his team when they needed it most to help put this game away. The Cardinals end the regular season undefeated with a 12-0 record. They had dominated all throughout the year, and it's safe to say that the coaches were really happy with Dash, because he pretty much already helped them solidify a spot in the college football playoffs. But before they can get there, Dash is about to head into the biggest game of his season so far, because with an undefeated record, Louisville is now in the ACC Championship, where they will now have a chance to secure a bye week, and all they'll have to do is just take down the Miami Hurricanes. But things are looking real good early on for Louisville as Dash picks up a big first down on his first carry. He already feels like he could have a big game, so that's why on his next carry he decided to say hey and break free to the outside, where there was nobody in front of him as he was on his way to the end zone for an 84-yard touchdown. Dash Parr goes the distance on his second carry of the day. He's got his team going with a little momentum early, but it turns out that this one will be tied at 7-7 in the third quarter. And for one of the first times all year, it seems like Dash is actually not going to have to make a big play to help his team get downfield. His squad is stepping up here in the ACC Championship as they get to the 11-yard line, where they give the ball right back to Dash, and he would fry these defenders for another touchdown. Oh, nah, that boy Dash did them crazy. Regardless, he got his team with a 14-7 lead, which they would maintain after getting the ball back. Where now at the goal line, they have a chance to extend their lead even further, which they do after another Dash touchdown. He's got his team with a 2-possession lead in the ACC Championship. All they gotta do is just see if they can maintain their lead, which they can until the fourth quarter, as it seems like Miami's offense is not able to get much going, which means that for the first time in program history, Louisville will be winning their first ever ACC Championship. They get the job done 21-7, and Dash Parr leads the way with over 200 total yards of offense. He had a phenomenal day to help make history for the program, but it turns out that that would not be the only history that he would help make, because he would go on to help his coach earn Coach of the Year after having an undefeated record through the ACC Championship. But on top of that, Dash Parr would go on to be recognized as the best player in the country. He earns himself not only the Walter Camp, but the Sean Alexander and the Maxwell Award, along with the Heisman Trophy, the first one for this program since Lamar Jackson won it when he was in college. And I definitely think that he's earned it after going for over 2,000 yards on the season. Dash Parr was easily the best player in all of college football, as he not only got a lot of awards to show for it, but he also got a ton of attention too. Soon though, Dash knew that he would have an opportunity to take his team to new heights. They had a chance to compete for a national championship, but the only way to get there would be by winning in the first round of the playoffs, where they now will actually have to head into a rematch against the same team they just played, the Miami Hurricanes. Now this one was starting a little bit different than their first matchup together, as Dash was getting stopped all throughout this first half. He had no way to take off on his defense without exposing his powers, but that would eventually change here in the second quarter on a 2nd down and 7, where he snatched these dudes' ankles and huss, Dash is gone. He gets to the crib for his first touchdown of the day to tie this one up at 7, bringing us to the third quarter where Dash was absolutely locked in. He came out here and was saying hey to defenders and continuously picked up first downs. For some reason though, the coaches actually decided to take him out for the rest of the quarter, but luckily the Louisville offense was still able to put up a touchdown, bringing us to the fourth quarter where Louisville is now a couple first downs away from winning this game. All they have to do is just chew out the rest of this clock, but it looks like Dash has a different idea. He absolutely fries this man's ankles before breaking loose, and now there is nobody who's going to catch him as he's on his way to the end zone for another touchdown. Dash Parr got his team with a 2-possession lead here in the fourth quarter, where it looks like the Cardinals have done enough to get themselves to the next round of the playoffs. They take down Miami 21-7 in the Orange Bowl, and it's clear that Dash was the main reason for the win as he earns himself a National Offensive Player of the Week. He's got his team in the next round of the playoffs where they are one game away from making the National Championship. They have a chance to make even more history for the program. All they have to do at this point is just head into their next game where they will be faced off against fake-ass Patrick Mahomes and Nebraska. Now this game was stuck at 0 throughout the majority of the first quarter. It wouldn't be till a 3rd down and 10 with around 7 seconds left in the quarter where Dash decided that he was going to zoom into the secondary and take off. This kid is in the end zone for a touchdown that gives his team a 7-0 lead to start this game. And they would maintain their lead 7-3 by the second quarter, and Dash did a great job getting around their edge before obliterating this dude's ankles, before finding a way to break off a tackle and snatching another dude's ankles too. Dash Parr was a problem for this Nebraska defense, but not that big of a problem as they stopped him on a 3rd down before the quarter ended. By the second half, this game was now tied up at 10, but Dash would take advantage of the opportunity to fry up his opponent, and all of a sudden he is out of there. Dash is on his way to the crib for a touchdown that gives his team a 7-point lead, but they'll have a chance to extend it after getting the ball right back after a turnover. Dash takes another handoff around the edge to put his team up by 14 points in the second half. A lead in which they would maintain until the 4th quarter, but once again this team is giving the ball right back to Dash and he was making something happen with another touchdown. The Louisville Cardinals are up 3 possessions in the 4th quarter. They have complete control of this game at this point, and it's looking like for the first time in program history, they are headed to the National Championship. They take down Nebraska 31-17, and Dash Parr was the biggest reason why. He had over 200 yards on the day and multiple touchdowns that continuously extended the lead for his team. Dash had worked extremely hard all season despite the fact that he already has powers, because he knew that everything could come down to a game like this. This was the moment that Dash had been waiting for his entire life. He was a star player for a sports team with a chance to win a championship. The only thing standing in his way from winning it all at this point is a matchup against a top-ranked team in the nation, as Louisville will now be tasked to take down the Oregon Ducks. Early on in this game, this Oregon defense seemed locked in as they got multiple stops on Dash. They were not letting him pick up many yards at all throughout this first quarter. But at some point, Dash realized that he was just going to have to be better. So that's why on the 2nd down and 7, after taking his handoff, he would zoom upfield, where one block would spring him loose and he was gone. Dash Parr was running across the goal line for a touchdown that got his team a 7-0 lead in the first quarter. He thought it was crazy that he was doing this against one of the best teams in the country, but soon it would be clear that Oregon was not messing around. They not only tied this game up at 7 apiece, but they also started to make some pretty big plays on defense. They held Louisville to a 3rd down and 5, where the Cardinals knew that all they had to do was just hand the ball off to Dash, where not only would he pick up the 1st down, but it looked like he was up out of there. This kid was going so fast that he even had to slow down to let them catch up so it don't look suspicious. Either way, Dash got his team with a 14-7 lead by the end of the 2nd quarter, where with only a few seconds remaining, it was Dash again who came up with the catch to get his team into field goal range. They now had a 17-14 lead by the time they got the ball back, and they knew that the way Dash had been running all over this defense, they could not take the ball away from him. So Dash got the ball back in his hands and he was just gliding past this defense. The Ducks were not able to stop Dash from cruising down the sideline and then across the goal line, as he was just taunting them on his way to the end zone for another touchdown. This kid was destroying this Duck defense. Unfortunately though, that Duck offense was playing pretty well, as they got this one back to a 3-point game, and now Louisville was going to have to find a way to get back downfield for another score. They ended up getting pushed to a 3rd down and 8, where after this ball was snapped, Dash was calling for the ball, but it went to the other side of the field, but it turns out that it was caught for a big reception. Dash watches as his teammate comes up with a clutch play to move them into scoring range, bringing us to a 2nd down and goal where Dash knows that he has the chance to put this game away. He has a chance to make his entire family proud. All he had to do was just help his team score. So on this play, they handed the ball off to Dash, where he got a couple great blocks and got into the end zone for a touchdown. Dash Parr got his team with a 2-possession lead at the end of the 4th quarter. And at this point, thanks to another incredible performance, it looks like Dash just helped the Louisville Cardinals win their first ever national championship. Louisville takes down the Oregon Ducks to win their first ever championship in program history. They had dominated all season long after landing one of the top backs in the nation, as Dash Parr had been instrumental to this team's success all season long. He had cemented his legacy after a phenomenal season, and by the end of it, he led his team to the top of the college football world. Now, as far as the season stats, Dash Parr would go for over 2,700 yards with 34 touchdowns. He was beyond phenomenal, as he pretty much won every single award you can possibly earn in a single season. Everything from a Doak Walker to a Heisman Trophy to a national championship. On top of that, Dash would establish himself as one of the best players in Louisville history, breaking multiple records not only for the program but also on a national level, as he now was the all-time leader in rushing yards in a season. Ultimately though, Dash felt like if he was going to use his powers, he might as well help teams that really need him. And since Louisville had just won a national championship, he feels like he might have to enter the transfer portal, where there were a ton of programs that have never had any success, and he feels like he could be the guy to help them out. He was going to have a lot of options heading into the offseason, and a very big decision to make. Which brings us to today, where Dash Parr is thinking about his college football future. He knows that he can stay here at Louisville, but he also knows that he just won a national championship with them. And there are a lot of teams out there that need somebody to come and save their program. So ultimately, Dash decided that he was going to enter his name into the transfer portal, where he was going to choose a program that had never won a national championship, and he was going to do his best to help them get the job done. But after considering all of his options, Dash Parr had ultimately decided that for his sophomore season, he was going to sign with the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And now that Dash is here with Texas Tech, he's looking forward to getting to work with this team because he knows that this squad has a pretty easy schedule to start the year. So he cannot wait to come out here and try and help his team dominate their first game of the season, as they're heading on the road to face off against North Texas. Now, to start off his sophomore season, things were not going as good for Dash as he'd hoped. He was having a hard time picking up some yardage, but that would all change on this 2nd down and 1, where after taking a screen pass, Dash got a couple good blocks and zoomed upfield. He was outrunning these defenders on the opening drive of the game for a touchdown. Texas Tech is already in the end zone to start their season, and they feel like with a guy like Dash Parr that this will be the first of many throughout the year. Now, Texas Tech did not score more points throughout the first half, but that's mostly because they forgot that they had timeouts. It wouldn't be until the end of the 3rd quarter where Dash took a handoff to the left side, and he had enough speed to just glide past this defense for another touchdown. Texas Tech was beginning to catch their stride as they took a 14-0 lead by the 4th quarter. And at this point, it seemed like there was nothing North Texas could do as Dash Parr was going crazy. He just shrugged off a defender on his way to the end zone for his 3rd score of the day. But it turns out that he was not done quite yet, because with less than 30 seconds left in the game, Texas Tech decided to get the ball back to Dash, where he was showing no mercy. This kid just zoomed past this entire defense for his 4th touchdown of the day. Dash Parr was getting the season started off right with a huge performance, and on top of that, he helped his team pick up their first win of the season. Texas Tech takes down their in-state opponent 28-7. And it turned out to be a huge day from Dash Parr, who went for 177 yards with 4 touchdowns. He earned himself a National Offensive Player of the Week to start the season, and he was hoping that he could make this a regular thing as they continue throughout the year. Dash Parr wanted to become one of, if not the greatest running back of all time. But he knew the only way to do that would be by dominating throughout the rest of the year, continuing right here in his next game against FCS Southeast. Now, on Dash Parr's very first carry of the game, he got a couple great blocks up front before springing himself loose, and out of nowhere this kid is gone. He was already in the end zone on his first touch of the day. He was doing a great job setting the tone for his team with an early score, and it turns out that they would never look back from there. Because throughout the 2nd quarter, Dash Parr in this Texas Tech offense, well, they were absolutely dominating up front. FCS Southeast didn't have a single athlete on the field that was capable of taking down Dash Parr. This kid already had 3 touchdowns on the day before taking another handoff and breaking loose again. Dash Parr was heading down the sidelines for his 4th touchdown of the half. He was going so crazy that he felt like he might have to chill out a little bit before people get suspicious. It turns out though that he at least had one more big play in him, because eventually he would take another handoff to the right side of the field where he would pick up a few yards before saying, hey, frying this dude's ankles and getting to the end zone for a 5th touchdown on the day. Dash Parr was amazing, and he was the biggest reason why the Red Raiders would go on to take their 2nd win of the year. Texas Tech blows out their opponents 35-0, and Dash went on to have an even better game than he did the previous week with over 270 yards rushing with 5 touchdowns. And the best part about this is that after this performance, Dash would actually get another NIL deal, and he knows he got to take this one, bro, because he loves himself some steak. He would go on to earn himself another National Offensive Player of the Week, but he knew that although he was playing well to start the year, he was going to have to play even better going forward now that they're heading into conference play, because this week Texas Tech will be heading on the road where they'll be set to face off against the Big 12 opponent in BYU. Now, I'm not gonna lie, early on in this game, this BYU defense was playing pretty tough on Dash. He did have quite a few yards already, but he wasn't able to break out for a big gain like he normally would. It wouldn't be till later in the second quarter on a 4th down and 1, where this quarterback decided to keep the handoff and took it to the end zone for the team's first touchdown of the game. They were having a hard time putting up points in this one, but at least they took a 7-0 lead, and later on they would have a chance to extend it after this catch from Dash. That helps the Red Raiders get into field goal range and take a 10-0 lead before the 4th quarter, where at this point BYU's offense wasn't able to do jack shit. Now, their defense, though, was a little bit of a different story after they forced a fumble, and somehow they were able to scoop it up, and they were taking this one all the way to the other side for a touchdown. Luckily, though, that would be the only points that BYU would score on this day, and Texas Tech had already done enough to get their 3rd win of the season. Texas Tech has started off the season hot, going 3-0, even after a performance where Dash Parr didn't even rush for over 100 yards. But this was definitely something that Dash was going to try and change heading into his next game. And it wouldn't be too long before the fans would see that against NC State, because a minute into the second quarter, Dash Parr would take a handoff before bursting into the secondary. This kid was just flying past his defenders for the first touchdown of the day. These got Texas Tech on the board, and they would maintain their lead before getting to the 4th quarter. Where on this play, they got the ball to Dash on a screen, and he ended up getting some great blocks that allowed him to glide past these defenders and make his way to the end zone for his 2nd score of the game. Texas Tech now has a 2-possession lead, and they would never look back, because they still had this lead by the 4th quarter where they got the ball right back to Dash. And after taking his carry to the wide side of the field, there was nobody who could beat him to the sideline, as he was all of a sudden racing upfield for what will be his 3rd touchdown of the day. Dash Parr was back in the end zone again, and with the score, he had just done enough to help his team move to 4-0 on the season. Texas Tech remains undefeated thanks to a 200-yard performance from Dash Parr. He was having an outstanding start to his sophomore season, and his dad, Mr. Incredible, is letting him know just how proud he and his mom were because of it. His dad, Robert Parr, always wanted to play football, and he felt like he could have been a great player too like his son if he had tried. But regardless, at this point, Dash is continuing to work hard to prove that he is the top player in the country. Now, on the opening drive of the game, Dash Parr took a handoff to the left side before bursting into the secondary and saying, "Hey!" frying this poor fella's ankles on his way to cooking this defense for a touchdown. Texas Tech is on the board 7-0 after a huge play from Dash Parr. Eventually, though, Utah would tie it up at 7, and Texas Tech was beginning to have some major struggles getting the ball downfield. This game was ultimately tied at 10 by the end of the 3rd quarter, where the Red Raiders would find themselves on a 3rd down and 1 where Dash looked like he picked up a 1st down, but ultimately it turns out he did not. So they had to settle for 3 on that drive, but luckily Utah was not putting up any points. And despite the fact that Texas Tech would again get stopped on 3rd down, it turns out they had already done enough to come up with another win on the season. The Red Raiders are now 5-0, and Dash Parr went for almost 200 yards again. This kid is having a phenomenal season so far in what is definitely a tougher conference than what he played in last year. And that was something that he was looking to continue as he headed to his next game against Kansas State. But in this first half, it turns out that Kansas State was not playing around, bro. They even got a safety. This defense looked like they were going to lock in and stop this offense, but soon it'd be clear that Dash was not going to have that. He came up with a play that got his team in the end zone for their 2nd touchdown of the afternoon, and it turned out that was only just the beginning from there as Dash Parr began running all over this defense. He broke off another long touchdown run in the 3rd quarter, now putting his team up 21-2 before getting the ball back. And now Dash would have another opportunity to run straight up the middle and around this defense for another touchdown. This kid was beginning to look unstoppable to this Wildcat defense. But soon it was clear that he was not looking anything, because by the 4th quarter, Dash was quite literally not able to be stopped by Kansas State. He takes this one to the crib for a 94-yard touchdown. He's already got the team up 35-2, but it turns out that he was not done there, because later on Dash decided that he was not going to show any mercy. He would take another handoff up the middle before zooming past everybody. This kid was so fast, man, this didn't even make any sense. The country had literally never seen somebody do what Dash Parr was doing. And understandably so, man, people couldn't even believe that he was doing this at the highest level. It turns out, though, that Dash Parr was the truth, and he was the main reason why Texas Tech was now 6-0 on the year. The Red Raiders go on to dominate their opponents thanks to a 376-yard performance from Dash Parr. This kid put up historical numbers as he also contributed with 6 touchdowns. He went on to break a single-game rushing yards record for Texas Tech, and rightfully so, he would earn himself another Offensive Player of the Week. He was clearly one of the most dominant players in all of college football, and he was going to do his best to keep proving it as he head into his next game against UCF. Where in this one, it was not long before Dash Parr would make a big play that broke him free into the secondary and allowed him to race down the sideline for a touchdown. Texas Tech was tying this one up at 7, but it turns out that UCF was not playing around, because they would end up taking a 14-7 lead before Dash would decide to take it upon himself to get his team back downfield and across the goal line for another touchdown. This game was tied at 14 before eventually getting to the 4th quarter. We're on this play on the 17-yard line. Dash found a way to swerve out this defense and take it around the edge for his 3rd touchdown of the day. He's got his team with the lead for the first time in the game, finally doing enough to help Texas Tech stay undefeated on the year. The Red Raiders come up with another win, and Dash Parr had another 3 touchdowns. He was growing into one of the best players in Texas Tech history. This kid was dominating throughout his sophomore season, and unfortunately for the Baylor Bears, they would end up being the next victims that had to stop Dash Parr. Unsurprisingly though, they were definitely not able to do that early on. And truthfully, that didn't look like it was something that they would be able to do at all in this game, as they had no way of stopping Dash Parr in open space. By the 3rd quarter, he was heading downfield for his 2nd touchdown of the day, doing enough to give his team the 24-3 lead, and already doing enough to get the Red Raiders their 8th win on the season. Dash Parr was having an immaculate season, as at this point he already has over 1,600 rushing yards and over 500 receiving yards. This kid was a serious problem for opposing teams, but even still, he felt like he might be able to do even more without showing that he has powers. So he decided that in his next game, he was going to try and have his best game of his career, as Texas Tech is now heading on the road to face off against Houston. Now on one of the first plays of the game for Texas Tech, they know they got to get the ball to their star player, who is immediately able to make something happen. He finds a way to break into the secondary, and now he is racing down the sideline as he is on his way to the crib for the first touchdown of the day on his first carry. Dash Parr was starting this game out hot, but he'd need to keep it up because Houston strikes back with a touchdown of their own. So in this play, Dash knows he got to zoom upfield a little bit before cutting to the outside. And all of a sudden, Dash is moving back down the sideline for what looks like will be his 2nd touchdown of the day to tie this one up at 14. Dash Parr only has 2 carries, and he has over 150 yards already. He is frying up the 24th ranked team in the nation. But it turns out Dash was not done there, bro. He came out here and said, "Hey!" Oh my, nah, this man going crazy. Dash Parr has over 200 yards in the first half. And he's got his team with a 21-17 lead by the end of the 2nd quarter, where at this point Dash already has 7 carries for 230 yards. But it looks like on his 8th carry, he'll have a chance to go for a 32-yard touchdown. Dash Parr has 4 touchdowns in the first half. He is on pace to having one of the greatest games of all time. He's doing exactly what he said he wanted to do, and he is keeping it up here in the 3rd quarter. This kid now has all 5 touchdowns for his team. But it's crazy to think that he would get another chance to score after a Houston turnover that put Texas Tech at the 3-yard line and allowed Dash to easily get across the goal line for another score. Dash Parr was having one of the greatest games in college football history, and he was being helped out by Texas Tech, who turned the ball over again. Dash was down at the 1-yard line, where he scored his 7th touchdown of the game. It's safe to say that he had an incredible performance, doing more than enough to help his team come up with a big victory over Houston. They absolutely obliterate the Cougars 49-17, but they wouldn't have been able to get this done without a record-breaking performance from Dash Parr. This kid just had the greatest rushing game in college football history, and it seems like everybody was calling this his Heisman game, as he ended up rushing for 435 yards in 7 touchdowns. At this point, Dash Parr was easily the best player in the country, and he continued to prove it moving forward throughout the season as he kept dominating his opponents. He came out here in a game against TCU and put out another phenomenal performance, ultimately helping his team move to 10-0 on the year, and Dash would have another 250-plus yard performance. He also would get another NIL deal that helped him get even faster on the field. On top of that, he was becoming more aware than ever of how to use his powers. He knew exactly how to slow down and speed up, and he would show that in his next game against Kansas. Like on the 2nd down and 5, where he was patient early on before bursting through the secondary and getting around this defender for a touchdown. Dash Parr was showing that he had potential to become one of the greatest running backs of all time. He put up another big performance against the Jayhawks and helped his team come up with another win on the year. They moved to 11-0 before heading into the final game of the regular season, where against Iowa State. This was actually a close game up until the end of the 4th quarter, where after the 2nd down and inches, for some reason Dash actually got taken out the game. But luckily his team was able to score a touchdown and they brought him back out for the 2-point conversion. They were going to put their undefeated record on the line on this last play. But this team knows that they might just have to get the ball to Dash, who was able to power his way across the goal line for 2. And now for the first time in their program history, Texas Tech would end the regular season undefeated. They narrowly squeaked this one out 8-7, and now Dash and the rest of this football team are ready to lock in for the big boy games. As the 6th ranked team in the country, they have been invited to the Big 12 championship game, where they know with the win they'll be able to solidify a spot in the college football playoffs. But first, they will have to head into a rematch against the Houston Cougars. Now, I'm not gonna lie, throughout the majority of the first half, Houston was playing some very good defense. They were not allowing Dash to break off any big runs, but soon he realized that he would have to change that by zooming upfield, and all of a sudden Dash was making his way to the end zone for the first touchdown of the day. He's got his team on the board here halfway through the 2nd quarter, and he's hoping that moving forward that they will be able to keep that up. But on their next drive, they end up getting stopped on 3rd down. Luckily, they did score 3 points to go up by 10-0 in the 3rd quarter, where at this point, this offense seemed pretty locked in, and it wasn't even because of Dash Parr. His teammates were stepping up in one of the biggest games of the season, as they would end up getting all the way down to the 1-yard line, where this quarterback handed the ball off to Dash, who was easily crossing over for a touchdown. Texas Tech was up 17-0, and it would stay that way till the 4th quarter, where now with less than a minute left, Houston was pretty much out of this game. But despite the fact that Dash still was not able to get much going on offense, he still would find a way to help his team become Big 12 champions. The Red Raiders continued to have a historical season, led by Dash Parr, who broke another single-season rushing record. He continues to establish himself as one of the best players in program history. And now that it was the end of the season, it would become even more clear as he was awarded the best player in the nation. Dash Parr earns back-to-back Walter Camp Award along with another Maxwell and his 2nd straight Heisman Trophy, becoming the first ever player to win the award in his first 2 seasons of college football. And I'd say he definitely deserved it after a season where he rushed for 2,500 yards. On top of that, he had 34 touchdowns on the ground while going for 6 more receiving. But as great as this was, man, Dash knew that his team now had a chance to make it to the national championship. In order to do that, though, they were now going to have to head into their first game of the playoffs, where they were set to match up with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, on his 2nd rush of the game, Dash came out here and had a nice carry that was really setting the tone for this offense, because on the very next play, Dash would take his hand off before flying by these defenders, and out of nowhere, this kid was down the sideline for his first touchdown of the day. This offense tied this game up at 7, and it would stay that way till the end of the 2nd quarter, where with less than a minute and a half left, Dash was trying to help his team get back downfield to put up some more points. They ended up getting down to the goal line where nobody was guarding Dash, so he decided to come out here and try and catch this ball one-handed, but he dropped it. He dropped the pass. So yeah, the coaches decided to take him out after trying that, but at least the team put up points. Bringing us to the 4th quarter on this 3rd down and 4, where Dash was getting stopped short of the sticks. Notre Dame now had a chance to go back downfield and potentially take the lead with less than 2 minutes left, but they could not. And just like that, Dash was leading his team to the next round of the playoffs. The Red Raiders take down the 5th ranked team in the country, and they also win the Fiesta Bowl. But now heading into the next week, they know that they are 1 game away from making it to their first ever national championship. And the only team standing in between them and a chance at a title is the number 1 ranked team in the country, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, it wouldn't be long into this game before Michigan would see that Dash Parr was not messing around. He helped his team get down to the 13-yard line, where he had the widest lane ever and was pretty much able to dance his way into the end zone for a touchdown. He's got his team up 7-0 before Michigan finds a way to score 3 points. Where now here in the 2nd quarter, Dash is doing a great job taking advantage of some great blocks from his teammates. He continued to help his team move downfield as he caught the ball out of the backfield on this play, and this screen set him up perfectly to pick up a 1st down. They got to a 3rd down and 1 at the 2-yard line where Dash decided to take this man's ankles and come up with a touchdown to give his team the 2-possession lead. This team would have control of this game till the 3rd quarter, where they are still up 14-3. We're now at a 3rd and inches. Michigan has the chance to come up with a stop, and it looks like they might, but they could not bring down Dash Parr. This kid was breaking loose, and he was headed to the crib for another touchdown on the game. The crowd couldn't believe that he was doing this against the #1 team in the nation. He had well over 100 yards as his team was now up 21-3 and had complete control of this game. But Dash knew he wasn't taking no chances against the best team in the country. He decided to keep his foot on the gas, and on this play he came out here and fried this man's ankles. Dash Parr just ended this man's career before gliding to the end zone for a touchdown. He comes up with an incredible play that puts this game out of reach, and ultimately does enough to send his team to the national championship. Dash Parr just helped take down the #1 team in the nation, securing Texas Tech an Orange Bowl victory, and at this point everybody's recognizing Dash as the fastest player in college football. This kid was quickly establishing himself as one of the greatest players in college football history, as he now has his team at 15-0, with the chance at potentially winning a national championship. This program is having one of the greatest seasons in college football history, but they are still one game away from putting themselves at the top of the mountain. They are heading into the national championship where, for the right to call themselves the best team in the country, they will now have to take down the #2 team in the Miami Hurricanes. Now, to start this game off, this one was mostly led by Dash's teammates, as they were coming up with some pretty big plays to lead this team downfield. They ended up getting to a 3rd down and 7 where Dash was open, but this quarterback was sacked, and Texas Tech would end up getting the ball back with this game tied at 3. Now, this Miami defense was pretty good, and they were not allowing Texas Tech to produce much at all throughout the first half. And the coaches were actually blaming Dash for that, so they decided to take him out the game. And they didn't put him back in until the 3rd quarter, where it looked like Dash was finally starting to lock in. He was starting to become a threat for this defense, which ultimately allowed this quarterback to break free on this read option. They pick up a big 1st down in the 4th quarter that pushed their team deeper into scoring range. They ended up getting down to the 1-yard line, where at this point they knew all they had to do was just get the ball straight to Dash, who would pick up that 1 yard for a touchdown. The Red Raiders are now up 2 possessions in the 4th quarter. And unfortunately for Miami, they ended up turning the ball over on their next drive. And on top of that, they now have no timeouts. Now, they do still have a chance to win this game if they can come up with a stop here on 3rd and 16. But them boys were not using their brain, because they left Dash wide open, where he not only had room to pick up the 1st down, but he also jumped over a defender. Dash Parr just came up with an incredible play that picked up a 1st down and allows his team to chew out the rest of this clock. This kid came up with an incredible play, and it was because of him that for the first time in program history, the Texas Tech Red Raiders are now national champions. This team takes down the Miami Hurricanes and establishes himself as the top team in all of college football. And for the 2nd straight season, Dash Parr continues to grow his legacy as one of the greatest players of all time. Dash would end his sophomore season with over 2,900 yards and 40 rushing touchdowns. He also had over 700 yards receiving with 6 touchdowns through the air. But ultimately, he broke multiple records throughout the season as he continued to dominate throughout his college football career. But it looks like there might be a little bit more of a challenge for him coming up, because it turns out that the NCAA has ruled that supers are allowed to play college football. And there is now a lot more talent coming through that is looking to take down Dash Parr. So heading into the offseason, Dash realizes that if he's going to play one more season, then he might have to play for a better team to prepare for who's coming. Luckily, he has a ton of options to choose from, so he'll have a big decision to make. Which brings us to today, where it turns out that after a judge ruled that supers are allowed to play college football now, there are a lot of supers going around joining a bunch of college football teams. So Dash decided that heading into his junior season, he's going to have to hit the transfer portal and join an even better team where he could still potentially dominate while also helping another team win their first ever championship. He didn't want to go to a team that already had a lot of success, but he did feel like he found the perfect squad to go to. As it turns out that for Dash Parr's junior season, he was going to stay in Texas, and he ultimately decided to sign with the SMU Mustangs. Dash Parr is now with SMU for his junior season, and I'm not gonna lie, he doesn't mind the blue as much as he thought he would. He did tell the coaches that in order to sign with them, they'll have to wear the red jerseys a lot, along with him being able to wear his favorite number 2. Now, one thing that Dash had to actually tell the SMU coaching staff was that he was a super. He told them that he wasn't really using his powers over the past couple seasons, and he proved it in practice, as none of these guys were able to tackle him all day. So immediately they had to register Dash Parr's name as a super before they went into the first game of the season, where Dash Parr is now on his third team, but this is his first game as a super. He is actually going to use his powers and try to go crazy. So let's see how he does in his first game of the year against Nevada. Now, on his first play with his new team, Dash was not picking up very many yards, but on his second play, he decided to lock in immediately and zoom upfield. And it looks like Dash Parr is already getting his first touchdown of the year. He was absolutely locked in this one, and it would not stop in the first quarter, because Dash would have a play where he was seriously showing off his speed. This man was running faster than anything the crowd had ever seen before. He scores another touchdown to get his team up further, and soon they would be up 20-0. Where it's clear that Dash is only just getting started as he continues to fry people's ankles and zoom right by defenders for more scores. This kid is going crazy at the beginning of the season as he already has over 250 yards before halftime. And it looks like he was about to get even more as he came out here and said "hey" to a defender, absolutely obliterating this man's ankles as Dash Parr is now gone to the crib for another touchdown. Damn, my bad, y'all. 1 second. But we back in the end zone. Dash Parr has over 300 yards rushing, but in the second half he started working on getting some yards receiving as he caught a pass that allowed him to do this defense absolutely filthy. He took this one down the sidelines and towards the end zone for another touchdown on the day. And I tell you what, the fans in the crowd started to realize that Dash was playing a lot better than he used to in his previous 2 seasons. And he would end up proving it to him on a 2nd and 14 where Dash Parr was putting his superpowers on full display. This man was running around the entire defense. They had no way of stopping him because Nevada didn't recruit any supers to their team, and now Dash Parr was completely unstoppable, and that would become clear right here as he was running all the way back, as at this point he's all the way inside his own 20-yard line and he continues to move back. It looked like he might get caught on this play, but Dash Parr just showed the entire nation on live TV that he was a super, as he just came up with quite literally the craziest play in college football history. And on top of that, he did more than enough to help his team come up with their first win of the season. SMU goes on to dominate this one 48-0. And of course, Dash Parr was being recognized as an Offensive Player of the Week, as he ended up rushing for 368 yards and 6 touchdowns. And at this point, the word had completely spread that Dash Parr was a super. A lot of people were wondering how the NCAA was going to deal with this, but it turns out that the NCAA board decided to clear Dash of any wrongdoing, because at this point in his career, Dash Parr was the golden child of college football. So in a way, they wanted to protect his image as he moved forward throughout the rest of his season. Continuing right here in his next game against Vanderbilt. Now, on his first play of the game, Dash Parr was already up out of there. Dash was taking this one for an 84-yard score that was giving his team a lead early, and it turned out to be another game where Dash was playing against a squad where they had no supers on this defense. They were not able to stop Dash as he just continued to score touchdowns all day. There was nothing Vanderbilt can do as Dash continued to run around this defense, scoring his 4th touchdown of the game and already doing enough to get his team their 2nd win of the year. SMU wins another game, dropping 40+ on their opponents, and Dash Parr was the biggest reason why. He was having a big start to his junior season, but it turns out that his mom, Elastigirl, she messaged him just to tell him not to let up this season. And that's advice that he would definitely take heading into his next game against FCS Midwest, where it looks like Dash Parr has the chance to break loose into the secondary and go 99 yards for a touchdown. This will actually be Dash Parr's first 99-yard touchdown of his career. And with FCS West being a weak-ass team, SMU would go on to take another win on the year. They dominate again 35-7 as they are the 7th ranked team in the country. But now it is time for them to start facing off against some other top team. So far, Dash hasn't had a single opponent that had a super on their team. But that was about to change this next week, with Dash now heading on the road to face off against 10th ranked LSU. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when Dash came into this game, he was a little bit nervous because he noticed that this LSU defense had supers all over the field. They ended up holding SMU to a 3rd down and 6 where somehow Dash caught this pass and he would end up zooming around this defense before breaking off multiple tackles. And now it looked like Dash was gone. Dash was starting to gain super strength just like his dad. So on top of being faster than everybody, he was damn near untackleable. So LSU realized throughout this first half that Dash Parr was going to be really hard to stop, because he ended up scoring another touchdown that tied this game up at 14, before the Tigers would take the lead back by 7. Now bringing us to the second half, where Dash knows that his team needs to stay in this game. So that's why on this handoff he decided to zoom right by everybody. He got just good enough blocking to swerve around this defense and make his way downfield for another score that ties this game up at 21. Now unfortunately LSU had supers on their offense that Dash had no way of stopping. So unfortunately the Tigers would go back up by 1 possession, but Dash was taking it upon himself to move his team back downfield into scoring position before being brought down at the 11-yard line. Dash is able to help his team tie this one up at 28. And I don't know what's going on over there, but it looked like Dash trying to fight the ref, man. What's going on? What he doing? Now luckily this game would stay tied by the time the Mustangs got the ball back, bringing us to a 2nd down and 10 where Dash took a counter handoff up the middle before spinning out this defense. And just like that, this man is out of there. Dash Parr even against a team that had supers, but he still looked unstoppable. Now unfortunately LSU's offense was also unstoppable as they tied the game back up, but Dash Parr was leading his team right downfield into scoring range. There was damn near no time left on his clock before Dash ran back into the end zone for another touchdown. And despite the fact that LSU had a defense full of guys like Dr. Boom, Dash Parr would still do enough to help his team stay undefeated on the year. They take down the 10th ranked team in the country, and Dash Parr had to go crazy. He had 342 yards and 6 touchdowns on the day, coming up with a huge win against one of the best teams in the country, earning himself another Offensive Player in the Week as he moves his team to 4-0. And he was looking forward to helping his team go 5-0 in their next game against North Carolina. But after finding out that the Tar Heels have no supers on their squad, the SMU coaching staff decided to get other players involved, and they were definitely making the most of their opportunity. They had guys out here making some big plays to help the Mustangs extend their lead in the first half. At one point, they were already up 28-0 when Dash caught this ball out of the backfield and says, "Excuse me," cooking his defender up as he crosses over the goal line for a touchdown. Dash Parr was having a big day despite him not doing as much, and he would end up helping his team come up with another dominant win on the year. Dash would end up having 163 yards rushing and 81 yards receiving, and at this point he is looking around his schedule, bro. He does not see many teams that have supers on their squad. He does know that his old team Louisville recruited a lot of supers, which is probably why they are 5-0 right now. But regardless, SMU felt confident with Dash Parr leading the way. They know that this is his final year of college football, so he's going to give them everything he's got. And he would definitely show that early on here against Florida State as he rushed around this whole defense for a 36-yard touchdown to put the first points on the board. Dash was feeling pretty good early on in this game until later in the first quarter, where the only super on this Florida State team had tackled Dash, and it turns out that he actually injured him, so the coach decided that he's going to go ahead and sit Dash for the rest of the game, which turned out to be a pretty good idea as SMU still came up with a blowout victory. Now in the next week, Dash and the SMU Mustangs were going to be heading back on the road to face off against NC State. And 1 week after coming off injury, Dash Parr was lighting things up for his team again. He came out here in the second quarter against another defense that had no supers, and he pretty much was just doing anything he wanted as he single-handedly had his team with a 14-point lead before getting the ball right back after a turnover. And already at the 50-yard line, Dash was taking advantage as there was nobody who was going to be able to stop him. He just cruised around this entire defense for another touchdown that was already enough to put this game away. SMU goes on to dominate this one 42-17, with Dash having another incredible performance going for 288 yards with 6 touchdowns. He actually broke the program's single-game rushing touchdown record, as this time all of his scores were on the ground. Now at this point, SMU is moving into the back half of their regular season, where it looks like they'll be facing off against one of the worst teams in the country, but it will not be easy, because it turns out that 1-5 Stanford has one of the best supers in the nation, as Bone Smasher is a hard-hitting safety, and he's going to try and do his best to take down SMU and Dash Parr. Now Dash is coming off another immaculate game, so he's looking forward to keeping it up in this one. So that's why on this opening carry, he would end up frying Bone Smasher's ankles. He helped his team pick up some yards to set the tone, and he would keep that going throughout this drive. This Stanford defense was actually pretty decent as they had multiple supers in their defensive backfield. Dash would still find a way to get his team down to the goal line, where a play later he would cross right over for a touchdown. He's got them with a 7-0 lead early on, and by the second quarter, for one of the first times in the season, Dash is actually out here getting stopped on 3rd down. Stanford was doing their best to keep their offense in the game, but there wasn't really much they can do when Dash was saying, hey, as he continued to fry up Bone Smasher and embarrass him. Dash Parr at this point was beginning to completely take over as he would end up running around this entire defense for another touchdown. SMU is already up 17-0, and they did not look back from here as they end up taking a 24-6 victory. The Mustangs continue their dominance thanks to another 200-yard performance from Dash Parr. He was having a very big year as his team was now 8-0 on the season, but it turns out that his team was not the only undefeated squad in the ACC, because it turns out that Dash Parr's old squad was also undefeated, and now he would be tasked to help take them down, as SMU set to face off against Louisville. Now it turns out that this Louisville defense has multiple supers all over the field. And initially that didn't really stop Dash from making things happen, but unfortunately there was nothing he could do to stop his quarterback from throwing a pick. Louisville is able to pick off this pass, and Dash Parr is able to use his super speed to bring down this player before he takes it to the crib. Unfortunately, Louisville is up 7-0 to start this game, and on top of that, they prepared very well against their former player Dash Parr, as they come up with a huge stop in the backfield to push this to 3rd down and 20 and pretty much derail this drive. It wouldn't be until it was 14-0 in the second quarter, where it looked like Dash was finally starting to make some big plays against his old team. He even stiff-armed their 7-foot cornerback super into the dirt, ultimately leading his team down to the goal line where he caught this pass and was able to power his way in, scoring a touchdown that cut this deficit down to 7. And by the end of the second quarter, momentum was really starting to swing towards SMU's way. Dash was doing a great job not only being a threat on the ground, but also out of the backfield as he scores his second touchdown of the day through the air. He helped tie this game up at 14, and it would remain that way until the third quarter. But once again, there was nothing Dash could do about his quarterback throwing a pick. So Louisville would end up taking a 17-14 lead by the fourth quarter, where at this point Dash knows that he has to get absolutely locked in. So that's why on this 3rd down and 1 after taking his handoff up the middle, he was racing upfield, and it looked like one of the supers might catch him as he dove across the goal line for a touchdown. Dash comes up with an incredible play that gets his team in the end zone for their first lead of the day. And it turns out that Louisville was not able to respond with a score, which allows SMU to officially move to 9-0 on the year. They take down the 18th best team in the country 24-17. And Dash Parr would lead the way against his former squad with over 200 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He played phenomenal against his former squad to move his new one to 9-0 on the year. On top of that, they are currently the #1 team in the country. They have been dominating all year with the help of Dash Parr, who at this point is already considered to be the Heisman favorite. And he would continue to show why here against Virginia Tech as he took this handoff down the right sideline, and he would end up seeing this guy coming his way before snatching his ankles, and just like that, Dash was taken off for a 93-yard touchdown. Dash was coming up with a huge play here with less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter to ultimately help push his team to 10-0 on the season. SMU at this point is having one of the best seasons in program history. And on top of that, a lot of people are recognizing the fact that Dash Parr is still frying up teams regardless of the fact that they have supers. And unfortunately against teams that do not have supers like his next opponent in Georgia Tech. These are the type of games where there is pretty much nothing that their opponent can do to stop Dash. But ultimately he would decide not to go too crazy and only do just enough to help his team stay undefeated on the year. SMU is now 11-0 as they head into their final game of the regular season, where they'll have a chance to end the year undefeated, but in order to do that, they will have to take down the 20th ranked team in the country. And it turns out that against California, SMU was not having problems putting up points at all, and Dash Parr was barely even contributing. It wouldn't be until later on in the second quarter on a toss to Dash, where he would finally start making an impact with a touchdown that extended his team's lead. And it turns out that with California not really showing up to play today, that this score was already enough to move his team to 12-0 on the year. They take down California 35-0, and Dash Parr closed the regular season out with a 3-touchdown performance. He helps another team have an undefeated regular season, as he is still yet to lose a single game throughout his college football career. But that is definitely going to be challenged though moving forward, because now Dash is heading into some of the biggest matchups of his life. He's about to head into the ACC Championship, where he will not only be playing against one of the best teams in the country, but he'll be playing against some of the best supers in the nation, as SMU is about to face off against Miami. Now on the first play of the game, Dash Parr was not messing around, he would end up taking his handoff into a wide open lane that allowed him to get sprung loose into the secondary, and now he was moving down the sideline for the first score of the game. Dash is already putting SMU up early in this one as he is setting the tone for his team. Miami though would end up going to tie it up at 7 as there has now been 2 scores within the first minute of the game. But now Dash is actually looking to help his team go for another one as he zooms around this defense, and this man is gone. Dash Parr is headed to the crib for another touchdown, and even he can't even believe that he is doing this against one of the best teams in the country. He is absolutely dominating early on, and it didn't look like it was going to stop there. Because soon SMU would find themselves back in scoring range. We're on his first and goal, they decide to pitch it out to Dash so he can get to the end zone, but he was smacked out of bounds by one of Miami's top supers, Max Maximum. This man was not to be played with, and Dash would actually find out the hard way, because on the very next play, it was Max again who was helping to get the stop. This man just single-handedly held SMU to a 3rd and goal. But it looks like a 3rd time's the charm for Dash as he scores a touchdown that now gives his team a 2-possession lead, and they would never look back from there. Because by the 3rd quarter, it was 35-13, where they decided to just start giving Dash the ball immediately, and there was absolutely nothing this defense can do to slow him down. Dash was having one of his best games of his college football career. He came out here in the second half against Miami looking absolutely unstoppable. There was nothing they could do about Dash as by the 4th quarter, he actually helped them get to 60 points, doing way more than enough to earn this team an ACC Championship. The Mustangs would win this one 63-17, putting absolute belt to ass on the Hurricanes thanks to a magnificent performance from Dash Parr. This kid rushed for almost 500 yards and 7 touchdowns, having easily the greatest rushing game in college football history. He ended up breaking the national single game rushing yard record as he just continues to establish his dominance throughout the nation. And at this point, it's actually time for him to be awarded for it too, as Dash Parr would end up earning his 3rd straight Walter Camp, Maxwell, and Heisman trophy. He at this point has almost 3,000 rushing yards and 36 touchdowns. He at this point is having by far his best season in his college football career, but he has a chance for it to get even better if he can make it through the playoffs. He has a chance to help another team win their first ever national championship. So he's going to do his best to stay locked in heading into the 1st round against the Michigan Wolverines. Now it would not be long into this game before Dash Parr was breaking loose, and on the opening possession he was headed to the crib for a touchdown that ties this game up at 7. He's trying to set the tone for his team early on, but Michigan is a very good squad. They take the lead back 14-7, so Dash knows that his team absolutely needs him. He came out here on the first play of the 2nd quarter and was breaking off multiple tackles. These Michigan Supers were not able to bring down Dash Parr as he gets to the end zone and ties this one up at 14. Now unfortunately later on these Michigan Supers would begin to show up as one of them was actually able to pick off this pass, giving the Wolverines the ball back and now a 14-point lead in the 2nd quarter. Luckily, Dash was able to help his team get down to the field goal range, so now this would be 28-17 by the start of the 3rd quarter. And SMU would still have a chance to fight back in this game if Dash could break off a tackle as he just smacked a 7-foot linebacker to the ground before taking off on this defense. Dash is headed to the crib to bring this back to a 1-possession game. And it would stay that way as they got the ball again, and it was now 28-25. Where at this point, Dash is out here just embarrassing this defense. He is making plays all over the field to bring them down to the goal line, where eventually he was able to cross over for a score to give his team their first lead of the day. And unfortunately for Michigan, they were not able to score a touchdown. So it is now 32-31 in the 4th quarter, and all Dash has to do is just pick up a few more first downs to put this game away. He continues to move the chains for his team and take timeouts off the board for Michigan. Ultimately though, he would just decide to zoom upfield and get back in the end zone for another touchdown. He extends SMU's lead here late in the 4th quarter, and luckily he does enough to help his team move to the next round of the playoffs. SMU takes down the 8th ranked team in the nation, and Dash once again is the player of the game with over 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. He continues to be a leader for this team, but they'll need him to keep it up as they are now heading into one of the biggest matchups of the playoffs, where for the right to get to a national championship, SMU will have to take down an ACC opponent and the 5th ranked team in the country in the Duke Blue Devils. Now, it would not take long into this game before Dash realized that Duke has a different kind of super on their team. Dash was wondering who the hell this guy was for a second until he realized this was Syndrome. He thought that his dad had actually killed this guy years ago, but unfortunately he is back, and he is looking to take his revenge out on Dash in this game. But unfortunately for Syndrome, it looks like his revenge is going to have to wait a little bit because Dash was absolutely frying up early on in this game. He already had a touchdown on the board to start the first quarter, but they would end up getting the ball back still up 7 where Dash took this handoff to the outside and he was taking everybody's ankles. Syndrome was nowhere in sight as Dash was racing down the sideline and across the goal line for another score. This game looked like it was going to be dominated by Dash Parr, and it continued to feel like that later on in the second quarter when Dash came out here and snatched Syndrome's ankles. This kid is going crazy on this defense as he picks up a huge gain, and it looks like there's nothing the Blue Devils can do when their best player is getting fried like this. Dash would end up taking the handoff before zooming upfield for another touchdown on the day. His team is up 28-0, and soon they would be up 38-0 by the end of the fourth quarter. Where on this play, Dash decided to rush for one more touchdown against a defense that was stacked with supers. But even then, there was nothing they can do to stop Dash Parr from helping his team get to the national championship. The Mustangs beat the brakes off of Syndrome in the Blue Devils with a 45-0 shutout. This team punches their ticket to the biggest game of the year, and at this point people are starting to wonder whether or not Dash is the greatest player in college football history. It's definitely hard not to say that he is when he's having games where he goes for almost 300 yards rushing and almost 150 yards receiving to get to the national championship. Regardless, Dash knows that he is now heading into what will likely be his final game of his college football career, and he's going to do everything he can to help his team come up with the victory, as they are now set to face off against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, early on in this game, Notre Dame was doing a lot better job than most teams throughout the year at stopping Dash. They had multiple supers on this defense, but they were also just doing a great job at playing as a team. It wouldn't be till the second quarter on a 4th down and 2 where Dash finally started to get things going. He picked up a big first down for his squad, ultimately leading to a 2nd down and 1. Where on this play, he was able to power his way across the goal line for a touchdown. SMU is now down only 3 points in this game, and they're already sparking a comeback here after Notre Dame had all the momentum early. Because with less than 30 seconds left in a half when Notre Dame was trying to run a prevent defense, they did not realize that all SMU had to do was just get the ball to Dash where he could say, "Excuse me, skidoo-doo-bop, hey," absolutely frying his defense as he breaks himself loose with almost no time left in the half for a touchdown. Dash Parr is back in the end zone and SMU is now taking the lead for the first time in the game. Dash Parr makes a big play that has his team with a ton of momentum, and they would keep it as they got to the second half. Which brings us to a 2nd down and 13 where Dash took another handoff before making another incredible play. He is able to stay on his feet and get the team down inside the 5-yard line. Where a couple plays later, Dash was getting it back in the end zone, scoring a touchdown that gives his team a 2-possession lead here in the second half. Unfortunately though, this offense would begin to stall out a little bit as Notre Dame continued to fight back, and ultimately they would regain the lead 22-21 with less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Things are not looking good for SMU as it also feels like Notre Dame is doing a great job at containing Dash. Dash knew that that would have to change though, which is why on this play after taking the handoff he would snatch this man's ankles before breaking off multiple tackles, and just like that Dash was up out of there. He had a chance to take this to the crib for a touchdown, but instead he decided to waste the clock as he just decided to run across the goal line, and eventually he went down to chew up some more time. They were able to take all of Notre Dame's timeouts before getting to a 3rd and goal, where Dash found a way to cross over the goal line for a touchdown. He's got his team the lead here with less than a minute left in the game. And after Notre Dame failed to put up points of their own for the 3rd straight season, Dash Parr was becoming a national champion. SMU wins their first national title of their program history, taking down Notre Dame 29-22. And once again, Dash was the main reason why, with over 300 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. This kid had an incredible college football career, becoming the first ever player to win 3 straight Heismans and 3 straight national championships. And at this point, Dash is now widely recognized as the greatest college football player of all time. At the end of the season, Dash ran for 3,822 yards with 49 touchdowns. He also had over 700 yards receiving with 9 touchdowns through the air, leaving his mark as the greatest single-season performance in college football history. Dash Parr has a trophy case for the ages, as once again he has 3 national championships and 3 Heisman trophies. On top of that, he is also the all-time leader in rushing yards with over 7,500 yards. All Dash ever wanted to do was just play sports and be the best that he can be. And after watching his son play, it looks like he actually inspired his dad, Mr. Incredible, to start playing too. So maybe one day Dash actually might be able to play football with his dad, but for now, he's decided that he is done with college football and it's time for him to head to the next level and take his talents to the NFL. This is Robert Parr, aka Mr. Incredible, and throughout most of his life, it was his job to protect his city. It wouldn't be till later on, where he had a family of Incredibles, that he finally started to do some other things like watch his son Dash go out for sports and eventually become the greatest college football player of all time. This would obviously make Robert incredibly proud, and it made him realize that maybe he has a chance to have a career in football too. So today I am putting Robert Parr into College Football 26. Let's see if Mr. Incredible can become anywhere near as great as his son, as we follow him on his road to glory. Now, Mr. Incredible is obviously way too old for high school, but now that supers are allowed back into the public, he was able to create a football league that allowed supers like him to show off their talents and potentially earn scholarships for college. Now, early on into the football league season, it became very clear that Mr. Incredible was a problem. Opposing offenses had pretty much no answers for his physical presence over the middle. He was out here obliterating running backs in the backfield to the point where it seems like some of them were scared to take their next handoff. Bob would soon become a 4-star recruit, and a lot of coaches actually felt like he was a 5-star, but they also felt like he was too old. So believe it or not, Mr. Incredible would cap out as a 4-star recruit, even though he was definitely playing better than one. And regardless, it seemed like every school in the nation wanted to sign Robert Parr. Soon though, he had to figure out what school he wanted to go to, and it turned out that his top 3 were Wisconsin, Stanford, and Nebraska. For a second, it was actually looking like he might sign with fake-ass Patrick Mahomes in Nebraska, but nah, he knew he couldn't do that. So ultimately, for his college decision, Robert Parr would decide to sign with the Stanford Cardinals. And now that Robert is here with Stanford, just like many of the coaches thought, although he is a 4-star recruit, he is already a 99 overall. This man was already looking like he was one of the best players in the nation, and he was definitely proving it here in training camp. Eventually though, would come time for the first game of the season, where now Robert knew that he was about to begin a new legacy outside of Mr. Incredible. He already showed the world what he can do as a superhero, so now it was time for them to see what he can do on the field. And he was looking forward to this opportunity in the first game of the season against Hawaii. Now, on the very first play of the year for the Stanford defense, they ended up getting a safety. Bob was not the guy to do it, but his teammate brings the quarterback down and allows Stanford to take a 5-point lead in the second quarter, bringing us to a 3rd down and 6 where it looks like Stanford's defense is continuing to stay locked in. The Cardinals kept pushing Hawaii to 3rd downs, and on this one, Robert Parr was there to make the stop, getting the tackle for loss while getting his team the ball back. Unfortunately though, Stanford would turn the ball over within their own 10-yard line, bringing us here to a 3rd and goal where it looks like Hawaii will finally convert, getting themselves in the end zone for a touchdown that allows them to take the lead. Now luckily Stanford would take the lead right back, and on another 3rd down, Robert Parr would come up with his first sack of his career. He makes a play that derails another offensive drive, but somehow Stanford keeps turning the ball over. So now once again Hawaii has great field position, but Mr. Incredible is trying to change that. He and his defense continue to come up with plays in this game, and luckily they would end up doing enough to get their first win of the year. Stanford squeaks this one out by 2 points in the first game of the season, and this coaching staff was heavily impressed with their new star player Bob Parr, who in his first game had 4 tackles for loss with a half a sack. That's not too bad for a 40-year-old freshman, and honestly the coaches realized that maybe they should give him some more control over how this defense runs. But on top of that, it seems like this defense is actually about to get a little bit better, because it turns out that 2 of their supers, Bone Smasher and Big Black, well, they are coming back from injury after missing the first game of the year, and they're ready to get their season started. And it was actually around this time where Bob started to grow a little bit of a beard because he was so locked in with football. He was more focused than ever on trying to become a great player like his son. So he was going to try and keep it up as he heads into his next game of the season against FIU. Now this game was starting off real slow for this FIU offense, but eventually they would make their way down to the goal line, where somehow this defense was able to get the stop on 3rd down, holding them to only 3 points. By the 3rd quarter, this was a 17-3 ball game, and this defense just kept getting stops on 3rd down. FIU had pretty much no chance in this one from the start, and the Cardinals would do enough to move to 2-0 on the season. Stanford comes up with a blowout victory in this one, led by Robert Parr, who ended up with 8 total tackles, with 2 of them being for loss. He was feeling really good so far to start the season, and he was looking forward to heading into his next game, where it looks like he might face off against his arch nemesis Syndrome and the Duke Blue Devils. Now it turns out that Syndrome had actually transferred from Duke. They said he had some character issues, but even though he's not here, this team is still going crazy. They are headed to the crib for a touchdown here early on in the second quarter, so the Stanford defense knew they had to be locked in from there. And that's why on a second down and 15, Robert came out here to try and pick off this pass, but it went through his hands. This is absolutely crazy. This ball quite literally goes through this man's hands. His fingers are stuck inside the ball, bro. What are we doing? Now, if things couldn't get any worse for Bob, man, later on he completely whiffs this tackle and allows the running back to break free to get to the end zone for a touchdown. So by the second half, Duke now has the 17-7 lead. And Mr. Incredible knows that he has to start making some plays soon, which is why in this one he came up with his first sack of the day. Mr. Incredible brings this quarterback down on a 3rd and 4, allowing his offense the opportunity to cut this lead down to 3 points, bringing us to another 3rd down where once again this defense comes up with the stop. Unfortunately though, not only does Stanford turn the ball over deep in their own territory, but this defense could not hold up as they go on to let up a touchdown, giving Duke back a 2-possession lead before thankfully Stanford pulls it back to 1. And now with less than 2 minutes left, this defense needs to make something happen. They push Duke to a 3rd down and 3, where somehow this defense came up with a stop, allowing the offense an opportunity to put up some points, which they did to send us into overtime. Now unfortunately, on one of the very first plays of overtime, this quarterback took this read option and went to the outside for a touchdown that is putting Duke back in the driver's seat. And after Stanford only manages to score a touchdown and a field goal after, Duke is now 1 touchdown away from winning this game. But Mr. Incredible knows that there's no way he can let that happen. So that's why on the very first play of Duke's next drive, he decided to come out here and say, "Wang-a!" Mr. Incredible just knocked the Sonic coins out that boy. He made this Duke receiver fumble, allowing Bone Smasher to pick it up, not only giving his team the ball back, but giving them their first overtime win of the season. The Cardinals escaped this one by 3 points against the 8th ranked team in the nation. Stanford comes up with an incredible win here, led by Big Black and Robert Parr. Both of these guys played outstanding today, but Mr. Incredible was definitely being recognized for his performance. At this point though, Stanford is now 3-0, and they were looking forward to going 4-0 in their next game against FCS West. And early on in this game, it was pretty clear that that would not be much of a problem for them to do so. Stanford was up 21-0 at one point before Rob came up with his first sack of the game, eventually bringing us to the 4th quarter here, where it is now 35-0, and Bob would come up with his second sack of the day, this time forcing a fumble that allows his teammate to pick it up, giving the Cardinals complete control of this game and moving them to 4-0 on the year. Stanford comes up with a blowout victory against FCS West. Once again, they were led by their new star linebacker, who this time had actually earned his first Defensive Player of the Week. The Stanford Cardinals now had a chance to move to 5-0. But it was not going to be necessarily easy heading into the next week, because they were not only going to be heading home to face off against an ACC opponent, but they were about to be matched up against the 3-1 Wake Forest. Now early on, Wake Forest found himself down at the goal line after a Stanford turnover, but Mr. Incredible was there to keep them at the end zone. He came up with multiple stops here at the goal line to help his team hold them to only 3. Bringing us to a 3rd down and inches later on, where Robert Parr once again is helping this team come up with the stop. This quarterback tried to QB sneak it, but he and his defensive tackle came up with a big play. This game was now 7-3 here later on in the second quarter, where Robert was still coming up with some nice plays in the backfield. He was just terrorizing this defense as they were not able to come up with many first downs. But by the end of the second quarter, it seems like they were doing just enough to get them in field goal range again, allowing them to take a 9-7 lead after halftime. Stanford's offense was not doing very well in this game, and at some point their defense wasn't doing too hot either. They allow a big play downfield that gets Wake Forest back into field goal range, but Robert was doing everything he could to make sure that that's all they would get on this drive. Bringing us here to a 3rd down and 13, where Bob was trying to watch over the middle, and luckily his teammate would make a play on the ball that forces a stop. Unfortunately, this Stanford offense has been atrocious over the past few games, so they turn the ball over again in their own territory, and despite the fact that Robert was doing everything he could to keep them at the end zone, he could only hold on for so long. And eventually Wake Forest scores a touchdown that puts them up by 2 possessions, bringing us here to the end of the 3rd quarter, where Stanford still is down by 2 scores. So Mr. Incredible knows that something has to be done about that, which is why on this play he decided to come out here and snatch this ball out the sky. But on top of that, there is nobody in front of him. Robert Parr comes up with his first pick of his career, and he heads down the sideline for his first touchdown. Mr. Incredible makes a magnificent play that gives his team a chance to get back in this game. Now, unfortunately, his offense was still not able to come up with a score, but this defense did come up with the stop. So they still had a chance to get back in this game, but the offense still did not score. So with less than 2 minutes left, this defense had to come up with another stop here, which they do after Mr. Incredible makes a tackle. This defense was making plays all throughout this game, and now all Robert can do is just hope that the offense will have their back. But it looks like they cannot get the job done, and Stanford takes their first loss of the season. Stanford loses 19-14 in a game where Robert Parr probably had the best performance out of any defensive player all football season. He ended with 14 total tackles, 4 of them being for loss, and 1 pick six. An absolutely outstanding performance that unfortunately was not enough to come up with the win. So he knew he'd have to help his team bounce back in their next game, which he felt like was probably going to be another tough one against the 4-2 Boston College. But in this one, Robert Parr was dominating from the start. He came out here making huge plays on this defense early, but none bigger than his 3rd down and 8 where he found a way to come up with a pick and easily get into the end zone for his 2nd pick 6 of the season. Mr. Incredible was getting to the end zone in back-to-back weeks, giving his team all the momentum in this one as they would later on be up 28-7, and ultimately they'd do enough to move to 5-1 on the season. They come up with a blowout victory 42-10, and at this point it is clear that Robert Parr is the best player on this defense. He earned himself another Defensive Player of the Week, and precisely halfway through the regular season he already has 10 tackles for loss, with 3 sacks and 2 interceptions. Still though, Bob feels like he's a long way from where he should be, and he's looking forward to an opportunity to be even better as he's heading into his next game against SMU. Now, Bob is out here playing against a team that his son played for last season, but unfortunately he is not playing very well against them early on. He misses a tackle that lets the running back in for a touchdown. Now Stanford is down 7-3 by the end of the first quarter, bringing us to a player where not only does Stanford get a stop, but they get a pick. But somehow, even with great field position, they only score 3 points. Stanford is now down 7-6, and this defense began to lock in as they continuously came up with stops. Thankfully, by the 4th quarter, this game would now be 19-7, where SMU still technically had a chance to come back in this game, but not after Robert Parr comes up with the pick. Mr. Incredible comes up with his 3rd pick of the season in his 3rd straight game, making a play that puts this game away and gets this team another win on the year. This team has definitely got back on track after taking their first loss of the season a few weeks ago, but now they know they have to stay locked in against what will be one of the toughest matchups of the season. They will not only be heading on the road to face off against a top-ranked team in the country, but it turns out that they will also be facing off against one of the best supers in the nation, as the Cardinals are heading on the road to face off against Black Blur and the Florida State Seminoles. And early on in this game, Florida State was dotting up this defense. It seemed like there was nothing Robert could do as the Black Blur took this handoff and got in here for a touchdown to take the lead for FSU. Now, unfortunately, things would not change much here in the 2nd quarter as FSU continued to drive downfield. Mr. Incredible didn't have any real way to stop Black Blur as he was making a catch and getting back in the end zone for another score. This Stanford defense is not looking good so far in this game, and if you ask Mr. Incredible, Black Blur would be the main reason why. Every time this man tries to tackle him in the backfield, he just ends up hitting the quarterback instead. But Bob knows that eventually he'll get a chance to hit him with that whang, as he absolutely smacks Black Blur, and now it's feeling like Mr. Incredible just set the tone for his team, because they came out here on a 3rd down and 11 and got the stop, allowing Stanford to now make this a 1-point game. And despite the fact that Florida State got back in field goal range, at the very least Stanford would come up with another stop. Of course, though, this offense was not able to do anything with it, so Florida State gets the ball back on their own 5-yard line, but Bob felt like this might be a good opportunity for him to get past this line of scrimmage and get a safety. Mr. Incredible brings the quarterback down in the end zone for a huge play that allows the Cardinals to take the lead for the first time in this game. With less than a minute and a half left, Stanford just has to come up with the stop, but they are admittedly struggling to do so. FSU got to a 1st down and goal, but they found Black Blur out in the flat, and Bob missed a tackle. Black Blur spins right past Mr. Incredible, and he gets FSU in the end zone to take the lead back. Things are not looking good for Florida State, but somehow they find a way to send this into overtime. Where just like in a previous overtime earlier in the season, this defense lets up a score early. Thankfully though, this offense found a way to regain the lead, and on his 3rd down and 4, it was Big Black who was coming up with the tackle in the backfield, sending this one into another overtime period where somehow it turns out that Stanford would win the game. The Cardinals somehow close this one out 37-35, and it would turn out to be another magnificent game from this defense's big three. Mr. Incredible, Bone Smasher, and Big Black all led this defense. And honestly, Robert at this point was playing out of his mind for this team. He was probably the biggest reason why Stanford was 7-1 at this point, which is crazy because at this point in the NFL, Dash Parr with the San Francisco 49ers, well, he has his team at 7-2. So both father and son are playing great so far this season, but Robert knows that he's going to have to play even better heading into his next game. He will not only be facing off against the 7th ranked team in the country, but it turns out that Pittsburgh is where Syndrome decided to transfer to. But not only that, because after hearing that Mr. Incredible was playing college football, he decided to switch his position to receiver, where he felt like he would have a better opportunity at taking his revenge on Mr. Incredible. Early on in this game, man, Pittsburgh was clearly not playing around. They were doing a great job keeping the ball out of the vicinity of Mr. Incredible, and it wouldn't be long before they would end up finding Syndrome in the end zone for a touchdown. Syndrome is already making plays in this one, and unfortunately this Stanford offense was not. They allowed Pittsburgh to have great field position on their next drive, and on the very first play of the drive, they let up a huge touchdown over the top. This defense was getting cooked up like some chicken fried rice early on in this game, and unfortunately for them, it would not stop there. This defense had no answers for not only Syndrome, but the rest of this Pittsburgh offense. At one point, it was 31-6. And despite the fact that Robert was out here making some nice plays, it was definitely far and few between. And unfortunately, Stanford would go on to take another loss on the season. Pittsburgh goes on to annihilate Stanford 34-6. The Syndrome was a big reason why, as he led the team in receiving yards, while on the other hand, Bob definitely could have had a much better game. Regardless, Stanford is still sitting as the 19th ranked team in the nation, but they still had a few games left in the season to potentially earn their spot in the college football playoffs, starting in their next matchup against Louisville. Now, this defense definitely bounced back in this one compared to how they played in their previous week, as Mr. Incredible was out here making plays all over the field all day. And by the fourth quarter, when Louisville was pretty much on their last chance to win this game, this defense once again comes up with another play that helps the Cardinals get their 8th win of the season. Stanford finds a way to get back on track, and they were just trying to find a way to keep this up heading into the final few games of the season. And against California, this defense was definitely playing well. The Golden Bears didn't really have any effective way of moving the ball downfield, and by the end of the game, after Stanford gets another third down stop, they do enough to move to 9-2 on the season. They take down one of their biggest in-state rivals, and now it is time for them to head into their final game of the regular season, where they will not only be heading into the toughest matchup on their schedule, because they will be facing off against the #1 team in the nation along with their super quarterback, Lord Legend. So hopefully Mr. Incredible can find a way to lead his team to victory and close out the regular season with the W. Now, I'm not gonna lie, early on in this game, Lord Legend was out here playing a little bit too much with Mr. Incredible. He almost threw a pick here early on, but instead picked up a first down. But Mr. Incredible knew that the next opportunity he got, he was going to have to come out here and snag this ball out the air. But not only that, because for another time on the season, it looks like there's going to be nobody who's going to catch him as Robert Parr makes his way down the sideline, and he just cruises his way upfield for another pick 6 on the season. This man came up with some immaculate plays all season, and it would definitely not stop there, because throughout this first quarter, he was smacking around this Notre Dame running back. He was really setting the tone for his team throughout this first quarter as he continued to come up with big plays and derail Notre Dame's next drive. By the third quarter, this game would now be 13-0, where it turns out that Lord Legend would start to fight back. This man just obliterated Mr. Incredible. I ain't never seen something like that happen to him. That's crazy. And that's probably why later on Bob decided to repay the favor by sacking Lord Legend as he helps put an end to this third quarter. Unfortunately though, Lord Legend would lead his team downfield and they would find a way to cross over the goal line for a touchdown. And after Stanford was not able to put up any more points of their own, Notre Dame now had less than 2 minutes left to drive down the field and win this game. And it is actually looking pretty good for their offense early on as they find a way to move past the 50. So at this point, Bob knows that his team needs somebody to make a play. He had to find a way to help his team put this game away. So on this first down and 10, he dropped back into coverage and said, Mr. Incredible comes up with the pick. He is making a play that gets his team the ball back with less than 2 minutes left, effectively doing enough to put this game away and close out the regular season with a victory. The Stanford Cardinals take down the #1 team in the nation, and they would not have been able to get it done without an incredible performance from Robert Parr. He had 10 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 2 picks, one of them going for a pick 6. This man helped take down Lord Legend as he earned another Defensive Player of the Week. And at this point, the entire team decided that maybe they should just call him Mr. Incredible, because that is definitely what he had been all season. And by the end of the year, it would show as he turned out to win the Chuck Bednarik Award. But not only that, because he would also earn the Bronco Nagurski and the Dick Butkus, establish himself as the best linebacker and the best defensive player in the entire country. Bob Parr would end his regular season with 86 total tackles, 20 of them being for loss, with 5 sacks and 6 interceptions, having a phenomenal year on his way to leading his team to the college football playoffs, where they will now have a chance to compete for a national championship. In order to do that though, they will have to make it out this first round, which will definitely be a tough one as they are facing off against the 12th ranked Northern Illinois. Now from the very start of this game, Mr. Incredible was absolutely locked in. He came up with a sack early on and ended up helping Stanford get a stop on their opening drive, bringing us to the following possession where it was pretty clear that Northern Illinois had no business being on this field. It wouldn't be till the end of the third quarter where NIU would finally start picking up some yards. They get down to the goal line and score their first touchdown of the game, so they feel like they have a chance to come back in this one, as it is now 16-8 at the end of the third quarter. All they have to do is just find a way to get back in the end zone, but Mr. Incredible ain't having it. He snags this ball at the air for another pick on his season, and he is making a play that does enough to get his team to the next round of the playoffs. Mr. Incredible comes up clutch once again to help his team win another game. And rightfully so, he would go on to earn Player of the Game for another incredible performance. Regardless though, Bob knows that he still has more work to do. And this next week ahead of him was going to be a big job to do, because he and the Stanford Cardinals were heading into a rematch against Pittsburgh in Syndrome. This would be a battle over who makes it to the semifinals, and Bob was hoping that he can help his team get the job done for a chance to compete for a national championship. Early on in this game, Mr. Incredible was locked in, but it turns out that it was not just him, because all throughout this first quarter, this defense continued to come up with big plays, and by the second quarter, Stanford would have the 14-3 lead, bringing us to a first down where Syndrome felt like he was about to make a huge play on Mr. Incredible. He knew he had to help his team get back in the end zone, but what he didn't know is that Mr. Incredible was about to smack him into next week. Syndrome just got obliterated by Mr. Incredible. Unfortunately though, this did not stop Pittsburgh from trying to move their way downfield, which they definitely did after getting to the goal line, and on this second down, they would finally capitalize with a touchdown. This game is now 14-10 by the end of the second quarter, and Pittsburgh is actually threatening to put up some points before half. So that's why on this play, Bob knew he had to come out here and snag this pick, taking points off the board for Pittsburgh and allowing his team to maintain their lead until it was eventually tied up at 17 in the fourth quarter. Luckily though, this defense was out here coming up with some big time stops. Stanford would have a 24-17 lead when on his 4th down and 4, they came up with another stop. They have the game completely in their hands, and now all they have to do is just chew out this clock, which unfortunately they could not do. So with less than 50 seconds left, Pittsburgh still has a chance in this game, but they would definitely need a big play in order to get back in it, which they would get. This receiver just mossed a cornerback for a huge play that puts their team in perfect position to score, and now things are not looking as good for Stanford. They ended up pushing Pittsburgh to a 4th down and 1, where this play has a chance to determine the outcome of the game. All Stanford has to do is just come up with the stop, but Syndrome gets open for a touchdown. Mr. Incredible was out here guarding his zone, but his teammates let him down and allow his arch nemesis to get into the end zone. Syndrome just got his team in position to send this game to overtime, but it turns out that he actually has different plans because he told his coach that he wants to go for 2. This defense has to come up with a play here as their season is on the line with this play, but all Bob could do was watch as Syndrome makes the catch, and it turns out he scored. Pittsburgh takes the lead over Stanford with almost no time left, and unfortunately, this would officially be the end of Mr. Incredible's freshman season. The Cardinals lose this game by 1 point, as Syndrome and the Pittsburgh Panthers move on to the next round. Mr. Incredible is absolutely sick after he had a phenomenal game, but still he could not do enough as Syndrome takes him down for the 2nd time in the season. Now as far as the season stats, Mr. Incredible was 2 tackles shy of 100 total. He also had 23 tackles for loss to go with 6 sacks and 8 interceptions, not to mention the 4 touchdowns, 5 pass deflections, and 3 forced fumbles. He was outstanding all season long, but entering the offseason he started to have doubts that he could win anything with this team. He had just let syndrome end his freshman year, so he decided that he might not only have to pick up a new team, but he'd also have to hit up his best friend Frozone to try and convince him to play some college football and help him win a national championship. Regardless, Mr. Incredible had a lot of options as far as where he wanted to go for his sophomore season, and he definitely had a big decision to make. Which brings us to today, where Dash Parr does not have to think long about what he wants to do with his future. He had just dominated college football for 3 years, so he knows that he is more than ready to officially enter his name into the NFL draft. Dash Parr is now officially on his way to the NFL, but first he has to participate in this NFL Combine. Now, unfortunately, in the NFL, players are not allowed to use their superpowers, so they actually gave all the players power-dampening t-shirts, but some of Dash's powers were definitely leaking through because he ended up running a 4.26. So the coaches believe that even without his powers, that Dash was one of the fastest people in the world, and he would continue to show that throughout the rest of the Combine as he ended up having a phenomenal day. He ended up having a very impressive Combine, and soon, it was time for him to head to the NFL draft. He knew that because he was a running back and because he wasn't allowed to use his powers, that he would definitely fall in the draft. But he did not have to wait long before getting a call from the San Francisco 49ers, who let him know that they will be taking him with their first-round pick, and that he is going to be a major part of the future of their franchise. Dash Parr officially signed his contract with the 49ers, and he is ready to get to work with his new team. He is out here showing the coaches that he is locked in at practice, but soon it would be time for them to see what he can do in a real game, as Dash is now heading into the preseason of his rookie year, where he will be set to face off against the Denver Broncos. Now, Dash's first touch of his NFL career was actually on a screen pass, where he was easily picking up the first down and more to get the team across the 50. He continued to do a great job throughout this drive, moving the chains for the team, eventually bringing us to a 1st and goal where he took it to the outside and found a way to cross over the goal line for his first score of his NFL career. Dash was showing that even without his full powers, he had the potential to be a great player, and people definitely still felt like there was no way he should have been the 17th overall pick. And he would continue to show exactly why on his 3rd down and 10, where he cut upfield, found a way to speed through this lane before making it to the outside, and now Dash is gone. He is still one of the fastest people on the planet, and it definitely shows as he scores a 92-yard touchdown, putting the Niners up by 3 possessions and already doing enough to get them their first win of the year. San Francisco starts off the preseason with a W, and Dash Parr was one of the biggest reasons why, as he went for 144 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So he is already looking promising to start his career, but he knows that since he is not yet a starter, he knows that he has to keep working hard to prove that he deserves to be one. So he knew he had to take advantage of any opportunity he got in his next preseason game against the Raiders, where there was actually one play on the 2nd down and 6 where he found a way to get to the outside before snatching these 2 defenders' ankles. And out of nowhere, Dash was out to the end zone for their first touchdown of the game. Dash Parr was looking great so far this preseason. He had another game with over 100 total yards, so he felt like soon he might step into the starting role. But he actually got called into the coach's office where they let him know that he will not be the starter. It turns out that the starting running back Christian McCaffrey is also a super. It's just that many people don't actually know it, but hey, when he's doing stuff like this, I definitely believe it. So unfortunately for now, even though Dash Parr was absolutely frying people in the preseason, it looks like he was not going to be the starter for San Francisco heading into the season. When his head coach actually came to talk to him about it, he decided to just be thankful, and he was going to wait for his next opportunity, which would not come in week 1. Dash Parr was not making his NFL debut quite yet, but he would not have to wait very long, because in week 2 they needed him for a couple plays, and they wanted to see what he can do against the New Orleans Saints. Now on his first play, Dash got out there, he was not picking up very many yards at all. He ended up getting his team to a 3rd down and 3 where he didn't get any blocks on his screenplay, and he ultimately got stopped, forcing his team to punt. Now unfortunately, Dash did not go back in throughout the rest of the game, and his team would go on to lose to the Saints. Dash did not have an incredible NFL debut by any means, but the coaches still believed in him, and they let him know that heading into the next week, as they were going to bring him back in an NFC West matchup against the Cardinals. Now Dash came out here on the 2nd drive of the game, and he was already saying hey to defenders and helping the team get across midfield. They continued to get the ball in his hands throughout this drive, and he rewarded them as he picked up more first downs, bringing us to a 3rd down and 4 where Dash was wide open but did not get the ball, so the Niners would actually have to settle for a field goal as Dash was taken out for the rest of the game. But luckily, San Francisco was able to come up with a win. Things are looking pretty good for the Niners to start the season, as they are now 2-1, and despite the fact that Dash hasn't really had a big game yet, he still feels very confident in himself moving forward throughout the season. His next opportunity would come the following week with his team at home against the Jaguars, where in this game Dash was actually getting quite a lot of carries. They ended up getting to a 1st and 10 where on this misdirection, Dash was breaking loose for a big gain. He was pulling off a run that helped his team get into scoring range, bringing us to a 2nd and 5 where they handed the ball off to the left side and he was making his way across the goal line for a touchdown. Dash Parr scores his first touchdown of his NFL career in the regular season, making a big play that gave his team a ton of momentum moving forward and ultimately does enough to help them get another win on the year. Dash was now getting more and more playing time as he was proving to the coaches what he could do. He ended this game with 90 yards and his first touchdown of his career, but he knew this was only just going to be the beginning for him, and he was looking forward to his next opportunity on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. Now Dash already had a few yards rushing on the day in this game, but the team would actually need him to make a play out of the backfield by saying hey and getting across the goal line for a touchdown. Dash Parr scores another touchdown on the season before ultimately being taken out of the game, and the Rams would actually go on to take the win in this one, dropping the Niners to 3-2 on the year. Now unfortunately, Dash would continue to get only limited opportunities throughout the majority of the season, but he was definitely still making the most of his opportunities, like in his next game against the Cardinals, as he was running all over this defense every opportunity he got, and in the second quarter he actually scores a touchdown, making a big play that gave his team the lead before halftime, along with a ton of momentum that carried over into the rest of the game, resulting with the Niners getting another win on the year. Dash helps his team take down the undefeated Buccaneers, and his performance played a huge part as he ended up with 90 yards and a touchdown. He was playing very well for a rookie so far, and it turns out that his dad was so inspired that he decided that he was going to start his football career too. So Dash was excited to see what his dad can do on the football field, but for now, he had to stay locked in on his own career as his team was heading into their next game against the Atlanta Falcons. And Dash was getting opportunities here early on in the second quarter, and he was definitely doing something with it by snatching people's ankles down the sideline. He was helping his team get down into scoring position, and on his 1st down and 10, he was actually the reason why they would get in the end zone. Dash just swerved around this entire defense for a score that helped his team take the lead, but Atlanta would take the ball back next time Dash was on the field. He knew that if his coaches decided to have him in here over Christian, then they definitely believed in him. So on this 2nd down and 2, he had to show them what he can do by saying, "Excuse me," absolutely obliterating this man's ankles as he is now making his way down the sideline for another touchdown on the day. Dash Parr comes up with a 62-yard score, and although he ended up being taken out throughout the rest of the game, he still did his part in helping his team get the win. Dash would go on to end this game with his first ever 100-yard performance in the regular season. He was starting to really show off, and on top of that, he was improving each and every week. He still had a long way to go before becoming as good as he felt like he could be, but he was looking forward to taking the next step as he was heading into his next game against Houston. And early on in this game, this Houston defense was absolutely locking up Dash. Things would begin to change though as Dash was starting to come up with some nice plays, and by the 3rd quarter when the coaches still had him in, Dash knew that it was time for him to make something happen. So that's why on a screenplay he would swerve around this defense and speed his way down the sideline all the way inside the 5. Dash Parr was putting his team in position to tie this game up, but it looked like he had a different idea as he got this ball around the edge and across the goal line for a touchdown. San Francisco takes the lead here against Houston, and this actually turned out to be a game where the coaches decided to keep Dash in throughout the rest of the day. So he was going to have an opportunity here in the 4th quarter to continue making plays for his team, and it looks like he might after zooming upfield, and now Dash was going untouched into the secondary as nobody was fast enough to catch him. This man was making his way across the goal line as he scores his 2nd TD of the day. Dash was going crazy on one of the best defenses in the league, doing more than enough to help his team move to 6-2 on the season. Dash was really beginning to establish himself as a major part of this offense. He ended up going for over 200 total yards in this game. He also scored 2 touchdowns in a performance that went on to earn himself an Offensive Player of the Week. Dash Parr was beginning to live up to his expectations coming out of college, which is probably why the coaches felt like it was time for him to move into the starting role. They let him know that going forward, he will officially be the #1 running back. And it would actually be the perfect time for Dash to step in and take over the reins, as the Niners are now heading on the road into one of the toughest matchups of the season, with San Francisco set to face off against the New York Giants. Dash Parr is taking the field for the first time as a starter. He is absolutely locked in for his first carry of the game, man. He easily picks up a 1st down, and it looks like he might even pick up even more as he is making his way past the secondary, and it turns out that Dash Parr was out of there. This kid is making his way down the sideline for his first touchdown on the day on his very first carry. He can't even believe that he was already doing this against one of the best teams in the league. And it turns out the New York crowd couldn't even believe it either after they watched him take another carry before zooming to the outside and making his way all the way down the sideline. Dash Parr is already out of there for his second touchdown of the day, going for a 61-yard score, but it turns out that he still had some more work to do in the second quarter, because later on his fifth carry, Dash Parr was gone again. This New York Giant defense didn't have anybody nearly fast enough to keep up with Dash. This kid just flew 67 yards for his third touchdown of the half, and you might not believe it, but he still was not done yet, because with 15 seconds left, Dash would burst into the hole before seeing a guy coming his way and snatching his ankles, allowing him to dive across the goal line for his fourth score of the half. Dash Parr was on pace to have a historical performance. He had his team up 28-9 before half. And on the very first play of the second half, it turns out that Dash would not only pick up a big first down, but this play was actually enough to set the record for the most rushing yards in a single game in NFL history. In his first game as a starter, Dash was literally having the greatest rushing performance of all time. And he would actually go on to cap off this drive with his fifth touchdown of the day, giving his team a commanding 4-possession lead and ultimately helping them move to 7-2 on the season. The San Francisco 49ers have been on a roll since incorporating Dash into their offense. He went on to have a historical game, going for 378 yards with 5 touchdowns. He had the entire country talking about his performance, as they knew that it was one for the ages. But Dash knew that he was only just getting started, as he was still a long way to go from where he could be. Regardless, he was looking forward to staying on track and hopefully helping his team come up with another win as they were heading back home to face off against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this is actually a huge game for San Francisco, and they came out here playing like it early on. By the start of the second quarter, they still didn't have any points, but on the second and goal, Dash was looking to change that as he got it to the edge and across the goal line for a score. He helped San Francisco take the lead in this one, and that pretty much set the tone for the team. Because throughout the second quarter, Dash would continue to move the sticks, and it would actually be in his first half where Dash ended up going for over 1,000 yards on the season. So that was definitely nice for him to pass that little milestone, but it was even better for him to get into the end zone as he helps his team come up with another score that extends their lead by 2 possessions. The 49ers have all the momentum on their side, and it stayed that way even with 5 seconds left. Because somehow in this play, Dash found a way to zoom to the outside, where he now had a ton of space to move upfield and pass this entire defense for a touchdown with no time left in the half. Dash Parr was running all over the Rams. He had almost 200 yards before half, and it's safe to say that he would continue to dominate here in the third quarter. Dash was getting to the edge untouched on a lot of these stretch plays. He was literally just too fast for this defense as he scored a 56-yard touchdown that not only puts him well over 200 yards, but extends his team lead even further. And by the fourth quarter, Dash was still finding ways to make plays by shrugging off this tackle and zooming upfield for what will be his 5th touchdown of the day. Dash Parr just had back-to-back games with 300+ yards and 5 scores. 2 of the greatest rushing performances of all time, resulting in back-to-back wins for the Niners. This team is now 8-2 on the season thanks to another miraculous performance from Dash Parr. He is somehow playing even better than he was when he was in college. And that's not something that would stop here in his next game against a 2-7 Arizona Cardinals. Because despite the fact that Arizona was playing pretty well throughout most of the game, they eventually could not stop Dash. He ran around this defense on a 3rd and 2 to give his team the lead here in the third quarter, bringing us to less than a minute left in the game where Arizona now has the lead back. But San Francisco was not only already in field goal range, but all they really had to do was just get the ball back to Dash, who would cruise around this defense for another touchdown. He got his team the lead with less than 30 seconds left, doing enough to get them another divisional win on the season. San Francisco hasn't lost a game in almost 2 months, and at this point not only are they the number 2 team in the NFC, but Dash Parr also has a big lead as far as rushing yards throughout the NFL. He also already has 19 touchdowns on the year, which is kinda crazy when you think about it. But for right now, Dash is just focused on helping his team win, because as a starter in both college and the NFL, Dash Parr is still undefeated. He has never lost a game as a starter throughout his entire football career. And unfortunately for the 2-9 Carolina Panthers, that did not look like that was going to change here, as Dash Parr was running circles around his defense throughout the entire game. And by the fourth quarter, after scoring his 4th touchdown, he had done enough to put this game away and move his team to 10-2 on the season. Dash Parr was quickly becoming one of the best running backs in the league after having another 200-yard performance. But even though Dash was playing incredible every opportunity he got so far this year, he still let the media know that he is only focused on winning. And he was hoping that there would be no problems doing exactly that against the 0-11 Cleveland Browns. But luckily it turns out that Cleveland's record is definitely justified, as they allowed Dash to zoom right by them multiple times throughout the day. He scores a long touchdown on the ground here early on in the first quarter, before the second quarter came around and they decided to get him the ball on a screen pass, where it looks like Dash is getting some great blocks downfield, and he now has a chance to fry this man's ankles and zoom back upfield for what will be his second score of the day on only his second carry. Dash Parr was phenomenal and ultimately did enough to move his team to 11-2 on the year. And Dash had once again led the way with another 200 total yard performance with 2 touchdowns. Dash continues to establish himself as one of the best backs in the league, even when he got guys like Carson Schlesinger talking crazy about him before games. Throughout the NFL though, people are starting to realize that Dash is on pace to lead the league in rushing yards. They felt like he might actually have a chance to win an MVP this season if he keeps it up. So he was looking forward to staying locked in here heading into his next game against the Titans. But for the first time in a while, Dash was playing against a defense that seemed pretty locked in too. Tennessee had come up with multiple stops on a Niner as they held him to 0 points by the end of the fourth quarter. But all that would change on his first down and 10 as Dash would cut back upfield, and all of a sudden it was just him and his oh my god, it was just him, and he was making his way upfield for his first touchdown of the game to give the team the lead with a minute left. Unfortunately though, it turns out that Tennessee would score a touchdown with 4 seconds left in the game. So now San Francisco had one last chance to keep their streak alive, but Dash ends up getting tackled before he could take off, and the Niners take their 3rd loss of the season. They dropped to 11-3 after a game where it was pretty clear that Dash Parr did not touch the ball enough. He only had 4 carries, so that was something the coaches knew that they would have to change heading into the next week. Fortunately, throughout the first half of this next game against Indianapolis, Dash only had 1 carry. His second carry of the game though here in the third quarter looked like it had potential to go the distance. He somehow escaped out of the clutches of these defenders, and he was now moving down the sideline for the first touchdown of the day for his team. Dash was making a big play that had this game tied up by the end of the fourth quarter, where now on his 3rd down and 4, the Niners needed somebody to make a play. And after Dash picked up this first down, it looked like he was going for even more as he got a couple great blocks downfield and found a way to zoom down the sideline, and out of nowhere Dash Parr is headed to the crib for his second score of the day. He helps his team take the lead here with less than 2 minutes left before Indianapolis ties it back up and sends it to overtime. San Francisco needs to find a way to put this game away. So they know they got to get the ball back to Dash, who was able to glide upfield, and it looks like the safety might not be able to catch him as Dash Parr is crossing over the goal line for a touchdown. He comes up with a 59-yard score with less than a minute left in overtime, doing enough to give his team the lead in another win on the season. San Francisco moves to 12-3 thanks to another 200 total yard performance from Dash Parr. This kid was absolutely dominating the NFL, as he was finding ways to come up with plays almost every opportunity he got, including this 4th down and 2 in his next game where his team was down by 3, but Dash is finding a way to get past this defense and move to the end zone with less than 30 seconds left in the game. He scores a clutch touchdown that helps the Niners move to 13-3 on the year. They are one of the best teams in the NFL, and they continue to show that here in their last game of the season against the Seattle Seahawks, as Dash Parr once again looked untouchable against this defense. He helped his team have this game tied up at 14 in the 4th quarter. On top of that, he had his team in scoring range with less than 30 seconds left, and on 3rd down, he was easily crossing over the goal line for another touchdown that not only gives his team the win, but would officially put an end to the regular season. The San Francisco 49ers went 14-3 on the year. And although Dash did eventually take his first loss as a starter, he didn't plan on taking any more throughout the rest of the season. And speaking of the season, he actually had a historical year. He rushed for 2,327 yards with 37 touchdowns, averaging 13 yards per carry. On top of that, he helped his team gain the #1 seed heading into the playoffs. Dash Parr was the truth, and the entire country expected to see something great out of him, despite the fact that in their first game in the playoffs, they will be playing in what looks like a monsoon. But hey man, Dash and his 49er team are not afraid of playing in any weather conditions. Them boys will come out here and play in a hurricane if they got to. And they're ready to show just how bad they want to win as they head into the divisional round against the New York Giants. Now, the last time Dash Parr played against the New York Giants, he broke a single game record and it looks like he might be on pace to do the same thing in this game. He came out here making some big plays early on out of the backfield, including the 2nd down and 9, where he is finding a way to make it right past these defenders for his first touchdown of the day. The Niners tied this game up by the end of the first quarter, and it remained that way throughout the second. Dash continued to put some work in on this Giants defense as the Niners kept moving the chains, bringing us to a 2nd down and 6 where Dash watched one of his teammates snag this ball over multiple defenders, and somehow, who was that? Jawan Jennings is going to the crib for a touchdown. This man just made one of the greatest plays of the year for the Niners. An incredible score that gets his team the lead here in the second quarter, and it wouldn't be long after where the Giants would turn the ball over, allowing the Niners to have the ball already in scoring range, which on this 2nd down and 5 they would quickly capitalize off of with another touchdown. San Francisco is up by multiple possessions, and it would stay that way until the 4th quarter. New York hasn't been able to get anything going on offense despite the fact that their defense has been playing better, and by the end of this game, the Niners would move on to the Conference Championship. They take down the Giants 21-7 to move on to the next round of the playoffs. It was a solid game from Dash, who had a hard time getting things going in a monsoon, but still scored 2 touchdowns and had over 100 yards total. The best part about this though is that Dash is still improving a lot. He knows he has a chance to help his team get to the Super Bowl, and his quarterback Brock Purdy was stressing how important it would be. So Dash knows that he has to be completely locked in for this next game. He and his squad have a chance to get to the Super Bowl, and the only team that's standing in their way is the 2nd seed in the NFC, the 14-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now early on in this game, this Tampa Bay defense was absolutely locking up Dash Parr. They got this team to a 3rd down where Dash had -9 yards, so San Francisco decided to throw the ball downfield where that was not working either. This game was actually 3-0 by the start of the second half, but nothing had really changed as Dash was still getting stopped in the backfield. He so far was having the worst performance of his football career, as at one point he had -7 yards before the 2nd down and 14 where he would finally pick up a 1st down. It looks like Dash is about to start getting into the groove of things as he gets to another 3rd down and helps his team move the sticks again, getting them down to the 18-yard line. Unfortunately, they did get pushed to another 3rd down where they did have a chance to put up some points, but that would change after this pass was picked off. Tampa Bay comes up with an interception here to get the ball back, and San Francisco still has no points on the board by the 4th quarter. Things are not looking good for the Niners, especially after getting stopped on another 3rd down. They have no choice but to punt the ball back to Tampa Bay with 3 minutes left, and unfortunately, this offense would never see the field again as Tampa Bay would run out this clock and officially put an end to Dash Parr's rookie season. The Niners would lose this game 3-0, ending the season with a shutout loss in the Conference Championship, and Dash Parr is sick. He knows that this game was 100% on him as he didn't score a single touchdown or even go for over 100 yards. He played like garbage in the biggest game of his life. But all he can do at this point is just reflect on a season of which it turns out that he would actually go on to win MVP. Despite of how disappointed Dash was in himself to end the year, he still would have an incredible season, putting up numbers that earned himself an MVP and an Offensive Player of the Year. But after finding out that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would win a Super Bowl, Dash Parr felt like he had to make up for that last game. So he was ready to head into the offseason locked in, where he can hopefully help his team get to another championship and win another Super Bowl. Which brings us to today, where Dash is actually presented with the option by his agent to demand a trade. He has a chance to get out of San Francisco, but ultimately, he decides to stay here to try and run it back with the Niners in his 2nd season. And now that Dash is here in year 2, he is already locked in here at training camp because his eyes are now set on a Super Bowl. He's going to try and do the best he can to help this team get back on top, but all that starts right now as they head into their first game of the season. The Niners will be heading on the road to match up against one of the top teams in the AFC, and they're hoping they can start the year 1-0 against the Buffalo Bills. Dash is taking the field here for his 2nd season in the NFL, and on his 2nd play of this offensive drive, Dash Parr was starting right back where he left off. This man was running straight up the middle for a 73-yard touchdown on his first carry. It was clear that Dash was absolutely locked in early on, but not only as a runner, because as a receiver out of the backfield, he was still out here saying, hey, snatching people's ankles, and on his first catch of the game, it looks like he is gone again. Dash Parr is already in the end zone for his 2nd touchdown of the day, and we're still in the 1st quarter. By the end of the 2nd quarter, it was already 16-0, and another handoff to Dash looked like it might get them back to the end zone. It looks like he is running circles around this defense, and he did not stop here in the 1st half. Because throughout this game, Dash was out here making plays without even getting touched. Even without using his full powers, he is so fast that there wasn't a single player on this defense that had a chance to lay a finger on him. Dash had 5 touchdowns by the end of the third quarter, but somehow he still was not done there. Because on one of the very first plays of the fourth quarter, Dash would take this handoff before cutting back and zooming upfield. And now once again, there is nobody who's gonna catch him. He is making his way to the end zone for an 83-yard touchdown untouched. This kid is having an incredible performance to start the season, and he was the #1 reason why his team starts the year 1-0. The Niners absolutely demolished the Bills by 30 points, and Dash would go on to have a historical day to start the season, as he rushes for 432 yards with 6 total touchdowns. This kid just had 500 total yards of offense, and rightfully so, he had become a big representation of what it means to be going fast. He would end up being recognized as the Offensive Player of the Week, but Dash knew that this was only just the beginning, as he had a long season ahead of him. So he was going to do his best to keep up the good work heading into his next game, which once again will be on the road, but this time will be against an NFC West opponent, as the Niners are now set to face off against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, early on in this one, the Rams were playing a lot different than the Bills had the previous week, because they were actually playing defense. At one point, the Niners were actually down 7-0 before Dash Parr and his offense started to get things going. He did a great job helping his team move into scoring range, and soon after this offense would capitalize as Brock Purdy throws a touchdown to George Kittle. So this game is now tied at 7 by the time San Francisco gets the ball back, and it looks like one of Dash's teammates are showing up again as Brandon Ayuk makes the catch, and it turns out he has enough speed to move past this defense and get to the crib for a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk helps the Niners take the lead, which was definitely needed, because they had a hard time getting pretty much anything going in this game, and eventually it would head into overtime, where now Dash is starting to do a better job at making some big plays, but it turns out that he is hurting. This man is going through it, as he has been getting hit all throughout this game, but ultimately he still did enough to move his team into field goal range during this overtime period, which allowed the Niners to come up with another win on the season. They squeaked this game out against the division rival 17-14, and Dash definitely had a rough day by his standards, as he only went for 60 rushing yards with 92 yards receiving. After this game though, Dash was wondering why his body had hurt so bad, until he realized that the only thing that could have done this to him was another super. So he started to realize that there are many more players in this league that are supers than he ever thought. And he decided that going forward, if other teams are using their powers against him, then he's gonna go absolutely crazy this year, and there's nothing they can do to stop him. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Early on in this game, the Green Bay Packers were definitely stopping Dash. There was even a play where Dash caught a ball over the middle before getting smacked into next week, fumbling the ball and turning it over to Green Bay. Luckily, San Francisco was only down by 6 points, but they had a lot of struggles on offense throughout this game. It wouldn't be till the end of the third quarter before Dash had a chance to zoom through this gap and break this dude's ankles, allowing him to get to the outside where he had a ton of room to get to the crib for a score. Dash just came up with an incredible play that gave his team the lead. But after he found out that he was getting the ball back with the same score, he knew that he had a chance to put this game away. And that's why on his first down and 10, he came out here and ran right around these safeties as he is turning on the Jets and moving to the end zone for another score. Dash just helped his team take the lead by 2 possessions, and after the Niners are able to get the ball back with Green Bay having no timeouts, it looks like they've done enough to move to 3-0 on the season. San Francisco is looking good so far to start the year, as they remain undefeated, and they were helped out by their star running back who went for 147 yards with 2 touchdowns. Dash is having a very solid season so far, but it turns out that he was not the only one, because it turns out that his dad, Mr. Incredible, signed with Stanford, and he was going crazy for the Cardinals. So Dash was definitely looking forward to seeing how his dad's season would play out, but he knows he has to focus on his own season too. And it turns out that he was going to have a pretty big matchup heading into his next game. The Niners are about to face off against the same team that booted them out of the playoffs last year. So hopefully Dash and his squad can get the job done, as they're getting set to face off against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, on this opening drive of the game, Dash was making some nice plays to help his team get into field goal range. Eventually, they'd get to a 3rd down and goal where Dash came up with the catch but was not able to get a first down, and by the end of the second quarter, this would now be a 10-3 ball game, bringing us to a 2nd down and 6 where Dash had the perfect opportunity to fry these defenders, and just like that, he is gone. Dash Parr is in the end zone for his first touchdown of the day. He helps his team tie this one up at 10, but that was about as much as his offense could produce in this game, as Tampa Bay's defense was swarming Dash. This one would actually end up going into overtime, where even then, this San Francisco offense wasn't able to get anything going. Dash knew that Tampa Bay had supers all over this defense, and despite the fact that he was having a really good game, he was simply outnumbered, and he wasn't able to help his team score in OT, which allowed this one to end in a tie. Dash was pretty upset that he couldn't help his team get another win, But on the bright side, he did have over 200 yards on the day. Heading into the next week though, his team would have a meeting about other teams using supers, and the coaches let Dash and other players know that they might as well use their powers as often as they can. If other teams are doing it, then they should be able to as well. So this team was hoping that they can come up with a big win in their next game, as they are now heading on the road against the New York Giants. On Dash's very first handoff of the game, he was swerving around this defense and zooming upfield. Dash had moved right past this defense on their first play of the game, and it looks like he would really set the tone for his team. Because all throughout this game, Dash was out here frying up this Giants defense, as there was nothing they could do to stop him, while on defense, the Niners were locking up the Giants. It would be 14-0 by the third quarter before Dash got his third touchdown of the day. San Francisco had complete control of this one, and they found a way to get their fourth win of the season. Dash Parr was having big games every single week at this point, and it definitely didn't stop heading into his next game against the Commanders, where despite the fact that Washington is 4-1, they definitely did not look like it. Dash Parr was running circles around this defense all day, as he was absolutely embarrassing them and really making them look like a JV team. At one point, Dash already had over 200 yards with 5 scores, but he took another handoff that was going for his 6th, as he just zoomed right past everybody and came up with another score that helped his team dominate this game. The San Francisco 49ers were still undefeated on the year, and they were definitely in a great position with a guy like Dash Parr leading the way. He was continuing to establish himself as the best running back in the league every single week. But even still, he was working extremely hard because he knows that he had a lot more work to do. He had to keep working hard to help his team stay undefeated, which he felt like he definitely was going to be able to do here in his next game against Denver. And throughout this game, it definitely did not look like he was wrong. At one point, this game was tied at 14, and Dash was just out here putting his powers on full display. There was absolutely no way this defense could stop this, as Dash was actually just too fast. He helps his team take a lead before Denver would tie it back up at 21, bringing us to another play on this 1st down and 10 where Dash just somehow willed his way to the end zone. Dash Parr was having an insane performance in this game, and it wasn't even just on his touchdown runs, because there was actually a player where Dash had fumbled the ball but still picked it up and found a way to gain a couple yards anyway. He was just clearly the best player on the field. So there was nothing Denver could do to stop him from scoring another touchdown and allowing the Niners to get their 6th win of the season. Dash Parr would go on to have a 364-yard rushing performance. He also had 5 touchdowns and 45 yards receiving, which puts him at over 400 total yards. This kid was the best player in the world, and he felt like the entire world should know it. So he decided to call out the media and any critics that had been doubting him and his team along the way. Now, it was actually around this time where his dad had sent him a message letting him know that he plans on declaring for the draft. He was already eligible considering that he was way more than 3 years out of high school, so Dash was looking forward to the opportunity to potentially play against or even with his dad. But for now, he knew he had to stay locked in on what was in front of him. And this next week was going to be a rematch against a divisional opponent, as the Niners are at home to face off again against the Rams. Now, this Rams defense was doing a great job at stopping the Niners from scoring a touchdown here in the first quarter. But unfortunately for them, that would not last for long, because in the second quarter, Dash would zoom around this defense, and it's looking like he is up out of there for his first touchdown of the day. The Niners take a 10-0 lead in this one before LA brings it back to 3. And with less than 30 seconds left in a half, this defense is hoping that they can come up with a stop, but Dash has different ideas. He takes this screen pass and makes the absolute most of it, as he gets downfield to the end zone for another touchdown, extending his team's lead back to 2 possessions, and they'd keep that lead heading into the second half, where Dash was not letting up. He already had almost 150 yards, but he decided to go for 38 more on this play. He got his team back in the end zone for another touchdown, ultimately doing more than enough to help them move to 7-0-1 on the season. The Niners managed to remain undefeated on the season, but in the NFL there is a saying called any given Sunday. And especially against teams like divisional opponents, Dash knows that he can definitely expect a good game. So he's going to do his best to help his team keep their win streak alive, as they're set to face off against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, early on in this game, Dash is doing an incredible job picking up yards for his team. He led them on a long drive bleeding into the second quarter, where on this 2nd down and 3, Dash got a couple great blocks up front and got across the goal line for a touchdown. His team takes the lead here before Seattle ties it back up, and I don't know where things seem to kind of shift towards Seattle's way, because on this play, Brock Purdy would actually throw a pick, turning the ball over to Seattle, and they now have the lead 10-7 in the 4th quarter. things were not looking good for the Niners for a little bit, but eventually Dash Parr would take over. He finds a way to score another touchdown that gave his team the lead back, and luckily it was enough for his team to come up with another win on the year. The Niners stay undefeated as they are now more than halfway through the season. They just continue to find ways to come up with the victory, and that's a theme that would remain as they're about to face off against an in-state opponent the following week. Because in his next game against the Chargers, Dash proved to be just too fast for LA. He would come up with scores all day that ultimately helped his team move to 9-0-1, while maintaining control of the #1 seed in the NFC. On top of that, Dash was by far the league leader in rushing yards, as he almost had more yards than the league leader in passing. He was on pace to annihilate the records that he set last season, and that was a pace that he definitely had a good chance at keeping up, as he came out here and was frying the Cardinals. Despite Arizona being a solid team, they had no answers for Dash all day, and he would end up being the biggest reason why the Niners would dominate this game. The 49ers get their 10th win of the season. They continue to establish themselves as the best team in the league, while Dash Parr continues to establish himself as the best player in the league. He and his father both were absolutely going crazy this season, and they would both be recognized all year for it. And it's safe to say that they definitely deserved it, especially in games where Dash was running around defenses like this. Dash was just out here carving up this Kansas City defense, and at one point he even had to come out here and say, "Hey," snatching a defender's ankles before crossing over the goal line. Dash Parr was absolutely incredible, as he helps his team move to 11-0-1 on the year, and it seems like at this point Dash Parr's legacy just continues to grow each and every week. It was already getting to the point where people were starting to wonder, where does he rank all time against every running back ever? He was out here doing things that people have never seen before, but even then he still had some of his opponents talking crazy. But yeah, boy, Dash don't play that, man. He let them know that they goofy. At one point though, Dash had actually sat down with his head coach Kyle Shanahan, and he let him know that he's willing to do whatever it takes to leave a long-lasting legacy. He wants to help this franchise win their first Super Bowl in over 30 years, but he knows the only way to do that is by helping this team stay locked in throughout the rest of the season, starting right here in his next game against the Raiders. Now in this game, it turns out that the Raiders were actually a lot better than expected. Dash wouldn't find a way to come up with his first touchdown until the end of the third quarter. Other than that though, this was definitely a defensive game, and ultimately the Niners would take their first loss of the season, which obviously didn't make Dash too happy, but at the same time he felt like there was a weight lifted off of him. There was no more pressure for this team to stay undefeated throughout the rest of the year, so now they felt like they can just play loose, and they definitely were doing that in their next game. Against the Arizona Cardinals, Dash had come up with some pretty big plays throughout the day. Unfortunately though, we would come to the end of the fourth quarter where Arizona had the lead by 1. The Niners were backed up on their own 30-yard line, and instead of passing the ball, they decided to hand it off to Dash, who ran right through this defense. With less than 20 seconds left, Dash Parr had ran right through this secondary, and he was on his way to the crib for a 70-yard game-winning touchdown. Dash Parr comes up with an incredible play that not only gave his team the lead, but also does enough to get them their 12th win of the season. The Niners find a way to come up with a victory on the road in the final moments of the game. And once again, Dash has an insanely clutch performance as he goes for over 200 yards to go along with a game-winning touchdown with less than 20 seconds left. This team looked like it was back to being on fire throughout the season, and it looked like it was going to remain that way heading into their next game in Philadelphia, because even though Dash didn't take a handoff until the third quarter, his first one was going for a touchdown. He was having another solid performance here against the Eagles, but unfortunately, once again the Niners would find themselves in the same position as the previous week. They are down by 1 point with only a few seconds left in the game. They have a chance to pull off a Hail Mary, but instead of that, they decide to give it to Dash, who zooms past this defense. Dash Parr, with no time on the clock, is going 70 yards to the crib. This man just got his team in the end zone for a game-winning touchdown as time expires. He just had 2 of the most clutch performances in NFL history in back-to-back weeks, and he's the main reason why his team would get their 13th win of the season. The Niners get this job done in this game thanks to Dash Parr, who went on to play great not only in his next game against Seattle, but eventually he would get to the final game of the regular season, where against the Dallas Cowboys, this defense had absolutely no chance. Dash had rushed all over the Cowboys throughout this game, putting up another dominant 300-yard performance by the end of the third quarter. But even then, he still showed no mercy as he scored his 5th touchdown, even though the Cowboys already had no chance of coming back in this game. And at this point, The Niners not only came up with the win, but they were now officially the #1 team in the NFC. They take down the Cowboys to claim the #1 spot, and after Dash Parr had ended the regular season with over 3,000 rushing yards, he couldn't help but brag to the rest of the league about how much better than them he was. He would go on to shatter every rushing record for a single season, as he also had 42 rushing touchdowns, which was the same amount as Joe Burrow, who had the most passing touchdowns in the league. After establishing himself as the greatest player in college football, he is already becoming one of the greatest players in the NFL. And he let his coaches know that he's ready to lead his team to some big wins in the playoffs. The San Francisco 49ers are back in the divisional round, where they have a chance to get to another NFC Championship. But the only way to do that would be by taking down one of the best teams in the league, as they are now set to face off against the Green Bay Packers. Now, early on in this game, it turns out that Green Bay was absolutely locked in. Dash was trying to get things going for his offense all throughout the first half, but that wouldn't really come until the very end of the second quarter, where after picking up a nice gain that gets his team to the 16-yard line, he decided to come out here and make a play that might help his team get to the end zone. Dash Parr was cruising down the field with around a minute left in the half. He comes up with a score that helps his team tie this game up at 7, and it would stay that way until they got the ball back in the third quarter, bringing us to a drive where Dash Parr was continuously moving the chains for his team. He would end up getting his team to a 2nd down and 6, where on this play he cut up field for a little bit before zooming to the outside. And just like that, Dash was back in the end zone for another score. He helped his team take a 14-7 lead, but unfortunately not only would Green Bay tie it back up, but they would start to get some big stops on defense. And it turns out this game would actually end up heading into overtime, where Green Bay used up most of the clock and found a way to get a touchdown. San Francisco has less than a minute left to score or their season is over. And I'll tell y'all what right now, this play is definitely not helping them. It is now 3rd down and 11, and they're counting on Dash to make a play, but he cannot get it done. It is now 4th down and 11. This offense needs somebody to make a play, and it turns out this receiver does. They come up with the catch while also getting a flag called on them, which ends up putting the Niners at the 50-yard line. With 1 timeout left, they still have a chance to come up with the play, bringing us to this 1st down and 10 where Brock Purdy finds his tight end over the middle, and that is a rookie tight end heading to the crib for a touchdown that brings the Niners back in this game. Dash Parr just watched his teammate come up with an incredible play that gave San Francisco some life. On top of that, it turns out that Green Bay was not able to put up any points. But unfortunately on this 3rd down and 19, it seems like Green Bay won't be able to either until Brandon Ayuk comes up with the catch. Dash Parr's teammates are making some incredible plays in this game, but none bigger than this 3rd down and inches where Dash takes this handoff to the outside, and it looks like he has enough room to move his team into field goal range. The Niners are in position to kick a game-winning field goal as they move on to the next round of the playoffs. This team finds a way to come back and take down the Green Bay Packers. This was a miraculous performance by pretty much every player on this team, but they were still definitely led by Dash Parr, who had 278 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns as he helped his team get to another conference championship. And it was actually going to be the week where San Francisco decided to debut their new jerseys, which definitely look a little crazy, but hey, you know what, I like them. Regardless though, Dash is as locked in as he's ever been in his career. He knows that he has a chance to help this team make history this season. He could potentially help them win a Super Bowl, but he knows that in order to do that, they'll have to make it through this next round and take down their next opponent, the Detroit Lions. Now on one of the very first plays of the game, Dash had taken a handoff to the left side before finding a way to zoom past this defense. And all he had to do now was just fry this man's ankles before getting to the crib for a touchdown. Dash Parr gets this game started early with the score, but Detroit would fire right back as they tie this game up at 7. Now luckily for the Niners, Dash throughout this first half was completely locked in. They were utilizing him a lot as a receiver, and he was showing them what he could do. They got to a 3rd down and 4 where they put him in the slot, and he ended up getting wide open, allowing him to make a catch before cruising right past this defense for another score. He was helping his team take the lead back in this game, which they would maintain until the second half, where now this Detroit defense was starting to make some big plays of their own. They came up with a huge stop in the Niners that allowed them to take the lead by 3 points. But Dash knew he could not let his team down, so he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to fly past this defense, as there was nobody fast enough to stop him in the open field, and all they could do was watch as he got to the end zone for another score. Dash was having another big performance in the biggest game of his life. But unfortunately, Detroit was playing pretty well themselves. San Francisco was having a hard time getting stops on defense, But they were definitely not the only ones, as Detroit allows Dash to go right up the middle, and this kid is headed to the end zone for another touchdown that gives his team the lead right back. He has almost 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, absolutely dominating this Detroit defense. But unfortunately, Detroit's offense could say the same about San Francisco, because Detroit once again regains the lead, and now San Francisco does not have a lot of time left to get back in this game. Luckily though, Dash was able to help them move into field goal range, where after a couple more plays of making it just easier for the kicker, they find a way to send this game into overtime, where unfortunately Detroit scores on their opening possession. Dash Parr, with less than 3 minutes left, knows that he and his team's season is on the line. He has to come up with a big play, and he knows that his franchise is counting on him. So that's why on this 2nd down and 6, this team decided to hand the ball off to Dash, who after getting a couple great blocks, he was gone. Dash Parr was running right past this entire defense as he makes his way to the end zone for his 5th touchdown of the day. He gets back in the end zone to tie this game up, and it looks like he is keeping his team alive for a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately though, it looks like Detroit is driving right down the field. And despite the fact that Dash had a phenomenal performance, his defense just was not good enough. And in back-to-back seasons, the Niners would go on to lose the NFC Championship game. They fall to the Lions in overtime after their defense could not get a stop throughout the entire game. And honestly, Dash isn't even proud of his performance because he knows that he could have done even better. He feels like he let his team down, as it turns out that the Pittsburgh Steelers would win the Super Bowl. On the bright side though, Dash did win another MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, so he realized that maybe he didn't let his team down as much as he thought, and that in order for them to win a Super Bowl, they would definitely need some help. And if they couldn't get it, Dash was once again given the option by his agent to demand a trade heading into the offseason. Every team in the NFL wanted Dash on their squad. All he had to do was just choose whether or not he wanted to stay with the Niners. So heading into the offseason, he had a huge decision to make. Which brings us to today, where over the offseason, Dash actually decided to get a haircut and even dye his hair too. So he's looking a little different, but that's alright. It was actually around the same time where his dad, Mr. Incredible, had officially made the decision to declare for the NFL draft. He was the best defensive player that college football had seen in a long time, if not ever. So rightfully so, he was projected as a top 3 pick, right behind Jeremiah Smith and fake-ass Patrick Mahomes. Now, eventually it turned out that the Arizona Cardinals had traded for the #1 overall pick. Everybody figured that they might be trading up to get Jeremiah Smith at the #1 spot, but it turns out they drafted Mr. Incredible. This is crazy. Dash couldn't believe that his dad is finally in the league. But now that he is actually here, he decided to tell his front office that he wants them to trade for his dad. The only problem is that Mr. Incredible was not only the best player in the draft, but he was already one of the best players in the league. The 49ers were sending their entire future for Bob Parr, but still the Cardinals would not budge. It was at this point though where Dash realized that if he couldn't get his dad here, then he would unfortunately have to go there. So after the Cardinals offer a massive haul of picks over the next couple years, the 49ers officially agreed to send Dash to Arizona, where he is now officially a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Dash Parr and his father, Mr. Incredible, are now on the same team, and the media is having a field day thinking about how much of a crazy in-division trade this is. Regardless, these two were both ready to get to work, as they were both doing a great job on their new team during training camp. Soon though, it would be time for the first preseason game of the year, where the Cardinals were going to be on the road facing off against the Buffalo Bills. And on his first play of his NFL career, Mr. Incredible was already coming up with a tackle. The Cardinals coaches knew that Bob was going to be a big problem for opposing offenses this season, but they wanted to see if Dash was still going to be making big plays too, and it looked like he was. This man had no problem tearing up this defense for big yardage, and the coaches had seen enough to take him out for the rest of the game, as the Cardinals would find a way to take down the Bills in the preseason. Jonathan Gannon, the head coach for the Cardinals at this point, knew that he had a chance to win a championship, having possibly the best running back in the history of the game alongside his father, Mr. Incredible. Well, that was an opportunity that pretty much every coach in the world would dream of, so he made sure to let Bob know that he was going to be starting right away. This franchise was going to need him to be the leader of this defense as they start the season, and they're hoping that they can begin the year 1-0 as they're on the road against the New Orleans Saints. Now, in the opening drive of this game, Dash Parr was proving that he was going to be a problem for opposing defenses not only as a runner, but out of the backfield he was going to make a lot more big plays this season, including this one here where he said, "Excuse me," snatching these dudes' ankles before getting his team inside the red zone. Bringing us to the very next play where Dash took a handoff to the left side and he was just running right around this defense for his first touchdown as an Arizona Cardinal. Things are going great on the offensive side of the ball to start this game, but I wish I could say the same about the defense, because Bob had no answers for this offense that was filled with supers after they changed the rule this offseason. So that was definitely something that he was going to have to get adjusted to. But at this point, this is something that Dash Parr is already used to. So there was no surprise that he would eventually find a way to break free into the secondary as he was zooming past these defenders for his second touchdown of the day. Dash Parr and this offense were locked in throughout this first half. And it definitely would not be just him, as it turns out that Ryan Wingo was also a super, and he was out here going crazy with a 71-yard catch and run for a touchdown. Hey man, I always knew something was up with him. That boy was too nice in college. By the fourth quarter though, this defense would start to really lock up, and the Cardinals had done enough to come up with a dominant victory in the first game of the year. They take down the Saints 52-14 on the road, and Dash would have a great first game with over 200 yards and 3 scores. His dad would also play pretty well too, coming up with 8 total tackles. But little did these two realize that this was a game that was making history, as Dash and Robert Parr become the first father-son duo ever to play in the NFL at the same time, let alone on the same team. So they were definitely feeling good after this performance, especially after Dash won an Offensive Player of the Week. But it turns out that he was not the only one playing well, because they would find out that Syndrome was drafted as a quarterback and he had taken over the #1 spot for the Chargers. He was out here going crazy for Los Angeles. So that was definitely something that Dash and Mr. Incredible had to look out for in the future. But for now, they were just focused on taking down their next opponent, which was going to be another tough game on the road as they were heading to Tampa to face off against the Bucks. Arizona over the past couple years had not been a good team, and it still looked like that had not changed when Dash Parr was not involved. To be fair though, it didn't look like things were changing much either on defense, even though Mr. Incredible was on the squad. They were out here getting walked down by Tampa, so Mr. Incredible had to show the world why they drafted him by smacking Baker Mayfield to the ground. This man just obliterated Baker Mayfield, forcing him to fumble, and he picked it up to create the turnover. Mr. Incredible was going crazy for this defense, which couldn't have come at a better time as this offense was starting to get things going. Dash had helped his team get down to the 1-yard line, where on the very next play he had crossed right over for a score, helping his team take the lead in this one as they moved forward into the third quarter. Bringing us to a 4th down and 13 where the Cardinals coaches wanted Dash to return a punt. And after he found a way to say, hey, he would zoom to the outside, and it looked like he might be able to take this one to the crib, but he was tracked down by his opponents, and he would definitely regret not finding a way to score because he was not able to get a touchdown on this drive, which would end up coming back to bite the Cardinals later on as Tampa Bay drove down the field and scored a touchdown. They now had the lead in this game with less than 3 minutes left, and the Cardinals had to find a way to make something happen. But they knew all they had to do was just get the ball to Dash, and he would zoom around this defense and break free into the secondary for another huge gain as he gets another touchdown on the day. Dash Parr would help his team take the lead back in this game, and they would maintain it after getting the ball back. All they needed was one more first down to put this game away. But it looked like Dash had different plans as he took this handoff and rushed by everybody. He scores his 3rd touchdown of the day. And his father couldn't help but be proud as his son led them to a big victory on the road. They take down the Buccaneers thanks to another almost 200-yard and 3-touchdown performance from Dash Parr. Mr. Incredible also had 12 total tackles in this one, including a forced fumble. And at this point, it looks like this franchise is on a completely new trajectory, as they feel like they struck the lottery with 2 of the best players in the league. They came out here against the Dallas Cowboys, and Dash Parr would run all over them all day, doing enough to help his team come up with a 2-possession win on the road in Dallas. He had another 200-yard performance while his dad continued to establish himself as one of the best middle linebackers in the league. And that's something people would see more of as they head into their first home game of the season against the Carolina Panthers. And in this one, it definitely came down to the wire. Arizona was down by 4 points before Dash took this handoff and raced around the edge and down the sideline for a touchdown. He not only helped his team take the lead back, but he gave his dad an opportunity to make a huge play for this defense. He just smacked Bryce Young before he could pick up the first down, and now this defense has the chance to put this game away, bringing us to a 4th down and inches where Mr. Incredible eviscerates this running back. Mr. Incredible just smacked Rico Dowdle into next Sunday, forcing a turnover on downs and helping the Cardinals move to 4-0 on the year. The Cardinals at this point are one of the best teams in the NFL. And although they only have 2 superpowered players, unlike many other teams who have closer to 5, they are 2 of the most impactful players in the league as Dash Parr continues to earn himself Offensive Player of the Week. But they knew they could not get complacent here, so Dash and his dad were working hard even on their off days. And although there were times where Mr. Incredible would see for himself how hard it was to tackle Dash, he would still find a way to hit him with that boing as they headed to the next game of the season. The Arizona Cardinals were heading back on the road again, where they were going to be facing off against one of the best teams in the AFC, led by Drake May, and the New England Patriots. Now it would take until the very end of this quarter for the offense to get going, but eventually Dash would make something happen after he snatched this man's ankles and brought his team into scoring range, bringing us to a 2nd down and 12 where he took a handoff to the left side, and after getting some great blocks, he was pretty easily able to cross into the end zone for a touchdown. The Cardinals are tying this game up before getting the ball back after a turnover, bringing us to a play where the Cardinals are capitalizing with another score. So they are now up 14-7 before getting to the second half, and at this point this offense had completely begun to lock in as Dash Parr was frying this defense. Dash Parr throughout the rest of this game had just ran all over this defense. The Patriots didn't have anybody who could keep up with the speed, so despite the fact that they were keeping it close, they had no way of stopping Dash. And ultimately, he was the main reason why the Cardinals would stay undefeated on the year, as they take down the Patriots 35-21. And at this point in his career, Dash is playing better than he ever has before. He is consistently scoring 3 or more touchdowns almost every game, while his dad, on the other hand, has become the absolute leader of this defense. Matter of fact, at this point in the season, Mr. Incredible is one of the leading tacklers throughout the NFL. There was a guy named Simeon Coleman who's another rookie super who plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of people do feel like they are 2 of the best middle linebackers in the league. But Bob wasn't the only one going crazy, because at this point Dash had more than twice as many yards as the next player. He already had over 1,000 yards and he wasn't even halfway through the season. But on top of that, he would also find out that Syndrome was going crazy too. He was one of the league leaders in passing and still hasn't even thrown an interception this season. So they felt like they might have to worry about that if they ever play him down the line. But for now, they just had to lock in and focus on staying undefeated throughout the year. They were going to head into a big matchup at home against one of the best teams in the NFL, as they were about to face off against the 4-1 Atlanta Falcons. Now, Arizona would start this game off well, at least on offense, as Dash was frying up the Falcons. He had took this dude's ankles before racing up the sideline, and he had come up with a 69-yard rushing touchdown. The Cardinals were tying this game up at 7 early on, but unfortunately it would stay that way until the 3rd quarter, where on the 2nd down and 4, Dash was getting tackled by another super, and he was definitely feeling the impacts of it, man. He was not feeling good. He was trying to make something happen for this offense, but he was not able to move as much as he wanted to. The Cardinals would continue to get stopped on 3rd down, eventually bringing us to a 20-7 ball game, where it looks like they will have no chance to score, but Ryan Wingo uses his superpowers to get open, and he is heading down the sideline to bring Arizona back in this game. This offense comes up with a score to put him down a touchdown, but unfortunately this defense cannot come up with the stop. And after this offense once again goes back to struggling, they would have no choice but to take their first loss of the season. The Arizona Cardinals would drop to 5-1 after taking their first L of the year, but it's crazy how Dash's worst game of the season is still a 138-yard game. His dad though knew that he also could have definitely played better in this one. So they both said that they were going to try their best to improve and bounce back in their next game on the road against the Raiders. But in this one, it turns out that the Raiders were right back in this game after a touchdown in the 4th quarter. And after an overtime period where the Raiders chewed up clock and methodically moved downfield, it turns out that the Arizona Cardinals will take back-to-back losses on the season. They are now 5-2 on the season, and they feel like if they don't stop this skid now, then their season might end up a disaster. Dash knows that all he has to do is just win a Super Bowl, and he will be considered the greatest player of all time. That is what he had wanted since he was a little kid. So he knows if he wants to do that, bro, he's gonna have to be absolutely locked in throughout the rest of the season, beginning right here at home against the Los Angeles Rams. Now, on one of the first plays of the game, Dash Parr would take a handoff up the middle before zooming right by everybody. This man was not playing around to begin this game. He was asserting his dominance early as he came up with a touchdown to make it 7-0. But even after the Rams tied it up at 7, he was still coming up with some big plays. Dash Parr was coming up with touchdowns all throughout this game until the Rams had no way of keeping up. And it wasn't until the 4th quarter where the Rams would finally stop Dash. But at that point, it was already too late as the Cardinals would stop their 2-game skid. They come up with a win against a divisional opponent to get their 6th win of the season. So they're looking pretty good about halfway through the year as the 4th-ranked team in the NFC. But in the AFC, it turns out that Syndrome was leading the Chargers to a dominant season. Even as a rookie, he was leading one of the best offenses in the league. But Dash and Mr. Incredible couldn't focus on that right now as they were locked in on their next game. They went into a divisional game against the Seattle Seahawks where it looks like from start to finish, the Cardinals had complete control of this game. On both sides of the ball, this father-son duo was dominating, and ultimately they both lead the Cardinals to their 7th win of the year. The Cardinals win 2 straight after losing 2 straight earlier in the season, but it definitely would not stop here because as Arizona moved forward into their schedule, they were getting matched up against some of the worst teams in the league like the 3-7 Vikings, who Dash Parr had no problem running all over, and the Vikings had pretty much no chance in this one after taking a 28-14 loss. The Cardinals, on the other hand, improved to 8-2, and it looks like they might have a chance to improve even more after heading on the road against the 3-7 Seahawks, where it turned out to be another game where Dash Parr was relentlessly running all over another defense. He was playing extremely well in this game, but it definitely was not just him, because on the other side of the ball, when his dad got the opportunity, he would say Shablaka. Mr. Incredible just smacked the shit out of Sam Darnold, forcing him to fumble, and he just watches his teammate take it down the sideline. Now, Buda Baker would end up getting tracked down again by another Seahawks receiver, which would not be his first time. But that didn't stop the Cardinals from going on to score a touchdown, taking the lead here by 2 possessions. Now, unfortunately, by the end of this one, the Seahawks would make it much more closer than people thought it would be. They tied this game up with 14 with only a few seconds left, and it looks like this game is heading into overtime, especially after Dash gets dropped in the backfield for a huge loss. Luckily, though, there is 3 seconds left, and Dash still has the chance to come up with a play. So on this one, when he got the opportunity to, he decided to cut back before zooming upfield, and oh nah! Dash Parr is headed to the crib for a touchdown with no time left. This man just made an incredible play that not only gives his team the lead, but moves them to 9-2 on the season. Mr. Incredible is absolutely hyped after watching his son pull off a miracle. It turned out to be a game though where both of them played pretty well, including Mr. Incredible, who had probably one of his best performances of the season. At this point though, the Cardinals had worked their way up to the 2 seed, and Dash and Mr. Incredible were both being recognized as the main reason why. Now their dominance would continue into their next game as they were heading on the road against Dash's former squad, the San Francisco 49ers, because even in a game where Arizona would find themselves down by multiple possessions early on, Dash Parr would still find a way to come up with some big plays. This man just climbed the ladder to snag this ball out the air. He comes up with a huge play against his old team, but none were bigger than the final moments of the game, where after San Francisco found a way to tie it up with only a few seconds left, Dash knew that on the final play of regulation, he had another opportunity to race downfield for a touchdown. Dash Parr had crossed over the goal line with no time left for the 2nd straight week. He just came up with miracle plays in back-to-back weeks, doing enough to help his team improve to 10-2 on the year. The Cardinals have their second 5-game win streak of the season, and Dash Parr was leading the way offensively with another 300-yard game with 4 touchdowns. Defensively, his father was by far the best player with 13 total tackles. At this point in the season, they are actually both top 3 in their respective categories. And throughout the rest of the season, that would not really change much, as Mr. Incredible is out here making some big plays to help his team come up with wins, while on the other hand, Dash had just continued to do what he had done throughout his entire football life by frying people's ankles and getting to the crib for touchdowns. Dash Parr and his father were going absolutely insane throughout the back half of the season, as they continued to help the Cardinals become one of the top teams in the league. They were sitting at 12-2 on the year, but it was actually around the same time where people were starting to consider Syndrome as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He was gaining a lot of recognition throughout the league, and honestly, Mr. Incredible couldn't wait for the opportunity to take him down. Now, eventually, the Cardinals were sitting at 12-1 after a game that ended in a tie against the Jets, but they would find a way to get back on track against the 49ers after Mr. Incredible said, "Wayne," coming up with a pick in the 4th quarter down by a touchdown, and he had enough room to take this one to the crib for a score. Mr. Incredible comes up with a huge play against his son's old team to help his new team come up with a 1-point victory. The Cardinals at this point felt unstoppable to the rest of the league. They had already clinched the #1 seed throughout the NFC, which is why neither Dash or his dad played in the final game of the year. Still though, they did come up with a victory against the Buffalo Bills, and eventually, it was now time for the NFL playoffs, where both the Cardinals and the Syndrome-led Chargers were both #1 seeds. The Arizona Cardinals were heading back to the playoffs for the first time in quite a few years, but Dash Parr felt like, especially with having his father on defense, that this team has the potential to make it to the Super Bowl. He wants to establish himself as the best player in NFL history, and he might be able to do that in this postseason, but that all starts right here. as the Cardinals will be at home facing off against the 9-8 Green Bay Packers. Now we start this game off on defense where the Cardinals push the Packers to a 3rd down and 11. They know they can come up with a stop here on this opening drive, but one thing Bob didn't know is that he would come out here and say, "Wayne," snagging this interception, and he's already helping his team get across the 50. Mr. Incredible makes a huge play that damn near puts his team in scoring position already. And Dash was definitely doing a great job taking advantage as he was finding a way to lead his team further down the field. They would end up getting to a 4th and goal where Dash finally crossed over for a touchdown. The Cardinals were up 7 points in the first half of the playoffs, but soon the Packers would tie it back up, bringing us to the very end of the second quarter where the Cardinals were doing a great job getting it to field goal range. They found a way to take a 10-7 lead before they got the ball in the second half, bringing us to one of the very first plays of this drive where Dash Parr is racing around this defense, and there was nobody who was going to catch him as he glides downfield for a touchdown. Dash Parr was helping his squad take a 2-possession lead in the second half of this game, and they never looked back from there, because the Packers were not able to get anything on offense at all throughout the rest of this game, and Arizona found a way to move on to the NFC Championship. They were now 1 game away from heading to the Super Bowl, and if they end up making it, Mr. Incredible and Dash were hoping that the Chargers find a way to make it too. They want to take down Syndrome for good. But in order to have an opportunity to do that, they're going to have to take care of business in their next game, which was going to be a tough one against one of the best teams in the NFC, as they're getting ready to face off against the 12-5 Chicago Bears. Now on one of the very first plays of the game, Mr. Incredible was setting the tone for this team. He came out here and obliterated this running back to let him know he was not playing. Turns out though that DeAndre Swift did not believe him. So that's why on the 2nd down and 4, Mr. Incredible said, "Wang!" Mr. Incredible just knocked the lights out of DeAndre Swift, forcing him to fumble again and allowing his team to come up with the turnover. This man just made an incredible play that put his team in scoring range already, which they would quickly capitalize off of with a touchdown to Ryan Wingo. Now this defense continued to come up with stops while Dash Parr was really beginning to get things going for this offense. He went for a 34-yard score that put the Cardinals up by 2 possessions, and it would stay that way until the 3rd quarter, bringing us to a play where Mr. Incredible said, "Oh! This man just gave Rome Odunze CTE." He continues to set the tone for this defense as they force Chicago to a 4th down and 9. And this is pretty much their last chance to get back in this game, but Caleb Williams overthrows the pass. And after Arizona went on to put up another score in the 4th quarter, they not only did enough to extend their lead, but thanks to a huge game from Mr. Incredible, they were now officially headed to the Super Bowl. The Cardinals would dominate Chicago 24-3. They put absolute belt to ass on the Bears thanks to a monster performance, not only from Dash Parr, but Mr. Incredible, who probably had one of the best performances of his football career. So he was definitely happy with how he played, but he knew that he might have to play even better heading into the biggest game of his life. As it turns out that Syndrome did indeed lead the Chargers to the Super Bowl. He is hoping that he can take down Mr. Incredible and Dash Parr and tarnish both of their legacies forever. But on the other hand, the Arizona Cardinals were looking for glory. Led by Dash Parr and Mr. Incredible, they felt like they had a chance to make history. So they're hoping they could find a way to come up with a win and earn their first Super Bowl victory for their franchise. Now early on in this game, Syndrome is letting Mr. Incredible know that he is not messing around. He is still mad that Mr. Incredible kicked his ass out of the car that one time, and he decided to take it out on him on the field today. Now luckily the Cardinals did hold the Chargers to 3 points on their opening drive. But it's too bad LA cannot say the same about Arizona, as Dash Parr was zooming past this secondary. He was coming up with a huge play on his first carry of the day, going for a 70-yard touchdown to get this game started. Arizona now has a 7-3 lead by the end of the first quarter, which is where Syndrome continues to dime up the middle of the field. There is no way for Mr. Incredible to stop this, bro. Syndrome has super enhanced abilities in his gear. So unfortunately, the Chargers would get down to the goal line and they would easily score, taking the lead back 10-7 as they head into the second quarter. Now Dash knew that with his father in this defense struggling to contain Syndrome, that he was going to have to play even better. He was going to have to take advantage of every opportunity, including this one right here, as he cruises down this wide open lane and has a ton of space to get to the sideline, where he was moving into the end zone for his second touchdown of the day. Dash Parr is single-handedly keeping his team in this game, which they would definitely need after Syndrome scores another touchdown as LA takes the lead back by 3. Thankfully though, Dash was looking to change that after taking his handoff and getting right past the defense again. This defense had nobody on the field who could keep up with Dash Parr, and that would become very obvious moving forward throughout the game. because even after the defense got a stop and gave the offense 4 seconds left in the half, Dash would still find a way to take advantage after snatching this dude's ankles, and oh nah bro, he going down the sideline again. Dash Parr is back in the end zone for his 4th score of the day. He is playing absolutely out of his mind at this point, and Arizona would head into the second half with a 10-point lead over the Chargers, bringing us to the very first play of the third quarter where Dash broke off a tackle, and hold on y'all, he looked like he up out of there. Dash Parr is outrunning everybody for his 5th touchdown of the day. He is putting on a phenomenal performance as Arizona has complete control of this game. Because even after Syndrome found a way to drive downfield and put up another touchdown to bring this back to a 10-point lead, Dash Parr just continued to put up points on this defense. They at one point were up 41-24, but even still Dash felt like he was not done there. So that's why on this play he would zoom right up the middle, and Dash Parr looked like he was heading back to the crib for his 7th touchdown of the day. Dash Parr not only has a Super Bowl record 7 touchdowns, but he had just come up with an incredible performance that was more than enough to earn him his first ever Super Bowl championship. Dash Parr had finally done it. He and his father, Mr. Incredible, had taken down Syndrome, and they couldn't have come at a better time as this franchise wins their first ever championship in their history. But on top of that, Dash Parr had just solidified himself as one of, if not the greatest player in NFL history. He went on to have a record-breaking 456-yard performance. He also had 7 touchdowns, which was another record. Now, admittedly so, Syndrome had also played really well, going for over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. But still, this defense did enough to get the job done, as they come up with their first Super Bowl championship in franchise history. Now, Dash went on to win MVP, but unfortunately his dad did not win Defensive Rookie of the Year. He lost out to Simeon Coleman, who apparently is just a demon. On the bright side though, Mr. Incredible did have an incredible season. Dash though did way more than enough to win an MVP as he rushed for 2,900 yards, with 41 touchdowns on the season. These two had just had a historical year, and they felt like together that they would be able to dominate the NFL, even with Syndrome and other supers roaming around. Dash at this point was just extremely grateful for his journey. He couldn't help but be thankful for his father and really his entire family for supporting him in sports ever since he was a little kid, and giving him the courage to become the incredible player that he is today. But this was Dash Parr's football career. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to get this one to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also be sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other videos till the next one comes out. If you got to this point, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you all have an incredible rest of your week, and other than that, I'm gonna catch you guys next time.